Hey friends, hope you're all doing well. We're doing okay too, just really tired since we've been working non-stop. We wanted to answer a question many of you ask: how does our publishing process work? Most of our audiobooks are first posted on Patreon as paid content. They stay behind a paywall for a few months. After that, they become free to access on Patreon forever. Then, a few weeks later, we upload them to other platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, our community hasn't been growing much, and we could really use your help. Please share our site in your Facebook groups, Discord servers, Reddit threads, Twitter, X, or with any friends who might be interested. Every little bit helps and we really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for being with us and supporting what we do, and Kale and Katu both agreed to travel along with him. Because if he left, they probably wouldn't have a pretty time. And he also promised a place in heaven, under his wing. With the promise of not doing a sin, unless needed. So Moon slept soundly, as he would by the time night came around tomorrow, he would be in the human world. And a week from now on, he would be in heaven, flying between the clouds freely. Chapter 21. He woke up on the break of dawn, just when the first ray of sunshine graced the mountain on the horizon with its radiant light, marking the beginning of the day. Moon muttered as he got up, feeling a bit tired even though he slept about 5 hours. Which normally would be enough for him to make a full recovery, but unfortunately, due to the intense fights that he had yesterday, it wasn't enough. But it doesn't prevent him from sending a message to Kale to request the delivery of the magical artifact. Moon, using a convenient magical artifact that is in the shape of a diary, sent Kale a message. Inform the mink to bring the magical artifact to the place. He wrote. While writing this, he would unconsciously fidget and twitch, displaying to those with a keen eye how excited and happy he was. A minute later, Kale sent a reply back. Okay, I'll send it. The place of transfer and time is the same, right? Kale inquired. Yes, it will be the same, though request someone strong to guard the artifact. Okay. Kale wrote. After that, Moon got out of the cave and started cleaning up his surroundings. Picking up a feather or two that fell and cleaning up anything that would suggest that he was here. A thing that he had done, because he had no desire nor need for any training. As he still hasn't recovered fully. So he spent the next few hours doing exactly that. Cleaning and picking up a few feathers. He even washed himself in the river, thinking that it would be his last bath for at least the next week or so. Human world, is it the same as Sir Moon described? Her daughter, Katu, who sat beside her, asked while stuffing her face full of food with stars radiating from her eyes. And the question she asked stumped Kale a bit, as her knowledge was not much better than her daughter's. It might even be worse than her, as she spent a lot less time with Moon. Probably. She answered ambiguous. Then if I went there, is it true that humans are just like us but taller? Katu continued asking, though this time, her tone had a hint of confirmation instead of curiosity. Kale just gently shook her head. Human, dear, not human. But yes, he said that they are very similar to us but taller, and their males are much better looking. And their skin color comes in a variety of different colors. With a smile adorning her face and her mouth still stuffed to the full with food, she sprang up. Yeah, human. He said that they come in many different colors, like black, yellow, white, brown, and even rare pinkish. Mom, do you think that we might be subspecies of humans since we are so much similar? I mean, the only difference is the fact that we are shorter and green. But humans also come in different colors, so? Kale in reflex opened her mouth to answer her question but stopped in the next second as her question fully registered in her mind. She does have a point. One part of her mind said, while the other part of her mind denied it the next second. No, we are completely different. The first goblins are born from the magical energy of the underworld, while God created humans. But the side of the brain that agreed with Katu didn't stop. Oh please, there are at least hundreds of gods and almost 10 versions of different gods creating humans. Though most indirectly, like how, in Shinto mythology, after the first deities, Izanagi and Izanami, created the land, Izanami died giving birth to fire. Then her body rotted in the underworld, maggots crawling in her corpse became the first humans. But still, our species should have some connections, but she shook her head intensely, as thinking of something like this is like asking which one came first, an egg or a bird. A paradoxed question with no clear-cut answer. We can ask about it when we get to heaven, she said as she continued her meal while waiting for the mink clan's reply. Which came about an hour later, in the form of a messenger bird. The messenger bird came in through the window and delivered a message that said they would meet up and would be there. With no mention of magical artifacts or who will be delivering them. But she shrugged it off as through the several months that she spent with the mink clan and through Moon's lie-detecting ability, she already learned that they don't have any bad attention towards them. But just in case, she forwarded the message to Moon, word by word, without leaving a single word or changing anything, thinking that he might notice something she didn't. Then she turned around and walked towards the treasury, where every magical artifact they managed to buy was located. Because they had managed to get the magical artifact they wanted through a trade. She, thinking that it would be a pity to leave all the money they had accumulated behind, bought every single magical artifact or totem they managed to get their hands on. Whether it was a boot that would increase the user's speed or a ring that would allow one to improve their digestive system. As long as they were useful, she bought it all. However, because some did not want to sell, she had to increase her offer or even offer an extremely high-grade potion. Though that said potion was only a potion with a lesser modifier, in the end, they now have quite a big collection. Using one of the most useful and expensive artifacts that she currently has, which is a bag of holding, a bag capable of holding 2 tons of weight while on the outside weighing only a kilogram, she exited the building accompanied by Katu. While also flanked by several guards, people who are ready to fight tooth and nail for them without hesitation. When noon came around, she reached her destination. A hill where she and a Mink clan representative first made an agreement. Between the thick woods and branches of the trees that fully covered the sun, she reached her destination. When she got there, she unexpectedly saw several minks already waiting there. Because she got here almost 30 minutes early, she expected herself to wait for the mink, but instead, they were already there. Judging by the fact that Famd, the son of the Thunder Rabbit and head of the Mink clan, was leaning against a tree while dangling one leg back and forth with his eyes closed, they seemed to have waited quite long. "Hello, Mr. Famd." She greeted once she walked closer. Her eyes narrowed toward the white rabbit as she walked. Famd, who was dozing, slowly opened his eyes as he stretched his body. "Hua." He yawned as he got up. "Hello, Ms. Gale, it has been quite some time since our last meeting." His face was adorned with a smile as he replied. "Yes, it has been, almost 3 or 4 weeks." She wondered out loud with a polite smile on her face. "Yeah, it has been 4 weeks, specifically 26 days. He replied with a smile as he gestured to the trunk of a fallen tree, suggesting that she should sit. Gale nodded back at him as she turned around and sat. Though not alone, Katu was a step behind and sat right beside her. "Mr. Famd, forgive my rudeness, but because of my excitement I can't wait to see the artifact," Gale said as she gazed at Famd with squinted eyes and the edge of her mouth raised, trying to speed up Famd as she was feeling excited about the prospect of going to the human world. Famd's face instantly falters as it transforms into a forced smile, and his head locks up in the previous position. "About that, you see." Gale, upon seeing this unusual expression and how he is wording it, instantly got a bad feeling. "Mr. Famd, should I be worried?" she asked, with her eyes narrowing as she tried to gauge what he was trying to say. Still, his face froze into a forced smile as he explained. "Well, there has been a bit of a complication that, unfortunately." But before he could finish, a person covered in a hood who was sitting a bit behind him stood up. "I will explain it, Famd, you don't have to." The voice was heavy and wizened, reminiscing about an old tree that weathered countless storms and still stood strong and steady. The hooded figure pushed back his hood and revealed his face. He had a face full of beard that reached down to his chest, and his face, at least the part that one could see between the beard, was fully covered in wrinkles. But his eyes, which glowed with blue light akin to the lighting itself, suggested otherwise. As if the beard and the wrinkles that adorned his face were just cosmetic that he adorned. Sometimes his blue eyes would flash like lightning, no, like thunder. He started walking closer to her, and when he moved, she saw his body through the openings of the hood. Instead of the small or thin body that his beard and wrinkles suggested, his body was filled with muscles and power. And every time he moved, his muscles would pulse and coil like a snake, no, like a python as it thrashed around fiercely. "Elder you are?" Kale asked as she studied the mink closer. "I am Thunder Rabbit, rape him," he said as he sat on the boulder that Famd previously leaned against. After that, he lowered his head and said, "I am sorry, but the magical artifact that we are trading, we don't have it. But if you want, I can trade in a magical artifact of equal value and send you to the human world through a friend of mine when he comes by next time," he said, his voice slow and calm, reminiscing of a lazy wind on the riverside. In contrast, Kale's voice was a fierce wind that is often apparent in the mountain peak. "What?" She stood up, her eyebrow shot open as she gazed at the old rabbit mink man. Not at the fact that he was the Thunder Rabbit, but instead at the fact that the magical artifact they are trading doesn't exist. How? How did they hide that they didn't have the magical artifact? Did they know Sir Moon's ability to detect lies and had done countermeasures? No, it doesn't make sense. I never revealed the fact that he had this ability, and through the several meetings we had in the investigation that I adopted, I already learned that a magical artifact that is used in the trade had once appeared and the Mink clan had taken it. But what does he mean, he doesn't have it? Dozens of questions and thoughts blazed through her mind as she tried to come to terms. It will be a long talk. Thunder Rabbit Rapim muttered as he turned his gaze to a tree in the far distance. Specifically where the moon is located. My friend, do you want to come down here and talk? He said as he gazed at Moon. Moon, who was observing in the distance, instantly flew to Rapim upon hearing his question. His wings brought forth a storm of wind as he stopped right in front of Rapim, blowing away his beard and ruffling his clothes in the process. What do you mean, you don't have it? The deep and magnetic voice of Moon came forth with raging finality. As if a dam is about to burst forth because there was a storm on the other side. Well, my friend, the magical artifact that was supposed to be traded was already used decades ago by my friend, and there is no magical artifact that is capable of doing something similar to it in the vault of my mink clan. Rapid said calmly, in contrast to Moon, who looks like a raging volcano with only a thin layer of crust being the barrier that is preventing him from attacking the deceiver, the liar. But his voice, despite his raging holy energy that is almost thrashing around him, came out as calm. So you deceived me, huh? How did you manage to deceive me? I thought my ability was well hidden and no one, not even those in the ultimate class, would be capable of seeing through it and deceiving me without my notice, he said. Rapim raised one of his eyebrows in surprise. Ability? Clairvoyance? No, that is not it. Is it the ability to detect lies? The edges of his eyes following his raised eyebrow also folded as it came in. Would you believe if I were to say that I never knew about it? Moon stayed quiet, his pupils in the shape of a cross boring down on Rapim, while his holy energy slowly started materializing into a physical form as it cast invisible pressure upon every being in the vicinity. Famd and the guards who accompanied them clutched their weapons tighter as their faces tightened into frowns. Beads of sweat rolled down the heads of the guards who were in mid-class, heck, even Famd's, as they narrowed their eyes. From the information that they collected yesterday, they already knew that the invisible backer of the shop was at the very least the peak of the middle-high class. The energy that Moon was radiating and the invisible pressure that he was radiating prove it true. Heck, he is probably at the very pinnacle of high class, considering that he managed to pressure even Famd, who was in mid-high class. They all stood still for a few seconds, waiting for Moon's response. Rapim is calm and still, with one of his eyebrows raised, being the sole exception. I believe you. Moon said, suddenly in the silence. His words cut through the silence like a sharp knife. Chapter 22. You said that you would send me to the human world through your friend. Moon continued, his words being the only sound transparent in the quiet world. Rapim nodded back at him, still with his relaxed face and expression. Yes, a friend of mine. A trustworthy one, I might say. Moon stayed quiet after that, his mind calming down. When will this friend of yours come? He asked in a questioning tone, but a hint of mockery was hidden in it. Why mockery? Because he could see that he was lying, not a full-blown lie. But half-lies that was a mix of truth and lies. Rapim acted as if he did not notice the hint of mockery. He slowly put his hands on his beard and started twirling the edges, and with a gentle look with his eyes dropping down, he replied. 7 months at the minimum, a year max. Kale's face tightened into a deep frown at the mink clan's extortion-like behavior. A lump formed in her throat, and a hollow pit settled in her stomach. A year max. It was just a dressed-up demand, a way of saying, wait a year. Until then, serve us. Be our ally. Help us pressure the two clans. Become our silent guardian. Their position as the head clan has already stabilized. Kale thought as she reflected on the things they had done for them. No, what Moon had done. He destroyed several bases of the two clans and killed hundreds, and quite a few high and mid-class warriors. Which caused them a severe shortage of manpower and funds. Causing the two clans to stop testing the mink clan and focus on recuperating the losses. And that is the only thing that happened on the surface. Minks, on the other hand, raided and took what Moon left off. On their first request, they took a caravan full of high-quality minerals. On their second and third, they took and looted quite a few locations, causing the mink clan to almost bloat with resources. Granted, because of the reinforcements that the Lizardman and Orc clan sent, they didn't manage to collect all of them. Heck, they only managed to salvage at most half, but still, it was an amount that was more than Kale had ever seen. And to add the cherry on top, they also weekly sent potions, which would also be worth a significant amount to the mink clan. Now here they are, requesting for them to be their silent guardian for a year. How firm do they want to cement their position? She unknowingly muttered to herself, feeling a mix of frustration and disappointment. Disappointed because she wouldn't be able to go to the human world and prospect to heaven. Frustrated because they cheated them of what they should have, and the fact that they managed to cheat them unknowingly, like a fool, only made it worse. She took a deep breath and focused on the conversation that was taking place right beside her, specifically between Moon and Rapim. So you fooled me, played me like a fool, unknowingly at that. Rapim gently shook his head. No, not exactly. My son Famt and the rest of my clan didn't know about it, only I knew about it. But I assure you, the magical artifacts that are being traded are of equal value to the teleporter. He said as he put his hand into the pouch beside him and took out a bandana. This magical artifact is created using a drake's skin, specifically its underbelly adorned with its scales, and it has the effect of automatically protecting the user from one ultimate class level, granted only the lower ultimate class beings attack every week. Moon stayed quiet as he gazed at the bandana. A magical artifact that to normal beings would be of equal value to the teleporter. But to Moon, it wasn't equal. His resilience and durability lowered the value of the bandana until it was akin to a slightly more pricey magical artifact, almost equal to that one artifact that he gave to Katu in the past. One that boosts the owner's senses and grants night vision. They might be of equal value to you, but to me, they are not. Moon said as his gaze shifted from the bandana to Rapim. Take your bandana and give me the artifact you promised. I will give you a week. If, by then, you don't have it, be prepared for the consequences. He said as he started turning around, only to halt at the next words Rapim said. My friend, don't be in such a hurry. If you don't want this, I also have other artifacts, and my good friend can take you to the human world when he comes by next time. Moon turned to Rapim rapidly, his eyes akin to the sun itself bearing down on Rapim. Do you think I didn't detect your half-lies? That friend you are talking about, who are they? Fallen angels. UK, devils. He said, his voice cracking and changing eldritch by the second. When the time comes, would you sell me to your friend of yours? Trustworthy? Probably to you. Do you think you could keep me quiet and handy with that artifact of yours? Only to take it back when the time came? The calm and steady expression that adorned Rapim's face slowly receded as Moon said everything he planned, some parts different but mostly correct. You got it wrong. He started explaining, his voice turning slightly colder in the end. Moon's pupil started glowing brightly as he continued. Again, a half-lie. Do you not understand that I can sense your lies? Moon calmly said, his deep voice blowing through the surroundings, kicking up dirt into the air, after which he turned around and started floating away. I want the artifact 2 days from now. Rapim looked on at the back of the defective, disgusting angel quietly. His face, no longer a calm smile, was instead an expression of absolute neutrality. No longer was his mouth raised in the corner to give anyone the expression of happy and easygoing. His eyes are no longer gently falling to give one a gentle look. Troublesome. Rapim thought as he tried to think of ways to keep the angel around. He could try to brainwash himself using one of his spells and try to fool it. But it won't guarantee that he would be capable of going past its ability to detect lies. Maybe he could try to give it an artifact capable of teleportation to another dimension a week or two from now, a second before he is caught and sent to that devil. As that was the amount of time he needed to bring that devil and its subordinates here, as he wasn't sure he would be capable of even defeating the defective angel himself. But, even if I am not sure of defeating it, Rapim thought with his eyes glistening like ice, but colder and calmer. I must not let him go. He thought. Ever since he started aging and becoming weaker, he started searching for anything that would allow him to extend his life, maybe even regain his long-lost youth. Through the years he did manage to find several things that allowed him to extend his life but nothing that would allow him to regain his youth. He tried sacrifices, costly potions, everything, but all of them without exception would only delay the inevitable. But about 3 years ago, he learned of the devil's peerage system and how it is capable of changing one's race into a devil. Upon learning of it, he tried connecting with devil nobles, specifically, vain ones who weren't smart but not complete fools. After a bit of searching and research, he found one that fit the description and made an agreement with him using the ancient contract that he had. To ensure that the devil wouldn't betray him when the time came. And in the trade that the devil and he made, in exchange for manpower and resources, the devil would transform him into a devil through the peerage system. The devil wished for astronomical manpower and resources in exchange. But he agreed because the devil agreed to extinguish its control over him after transformation and allow him to do free roam. With no obligation or responsibility that normally followed. He also managed to secretly enter a few clauses that ensured that the devil would never try to harm him, whenever directly or indirectly, and would protect him if necessary. And little by little he gave the devil everything he gained through his youth. Manpower, slaves, and resources for that eternal youth. His clan, which, thanks to his power and talent, rose to the very height it reached, slowly fell as it went down. Some minks opposed him upon learning of it, and he silenced them in turn. But even after sacrificing almost all of the things that he accumulated during his lifetime, it still wasn't enough. And just as he was thinking if he should retake control of the clan and raid the two clans, a mystery shop suddenly appeared, backed by a being who was equal to him. Granted, He grew weaker and slower just as the outside world assumed, but he didn't grow that weak to the point he was barely hanging at the late high class, different from what the outside world thinks. And the shop brought forth the thing he needed. The resources he managed to collect using the shop allowed him to fulfill his side of the deal, at least the material part. Now only achievements that the devil requested are left, and if he were to give this angel to that devil as an achievement, it would allow him to finally regain his youth, no, even beyond that, gain eternal youth. If only that hedonistic bastard drained at least a little. He thought with frustration. If that devil bastard drained at least an hour every day, his position as the young lord wouldn't have been threatened by his younger brother, and he wouldn't have been forced to pull an achievement from his ass every year. And you would be the last sacrifice before my eternal life. He thought with cold determination as he gazed at the back of Moon, specifically his backs, and he slowly started gathering mana on his legs and his right hand. On the soles of his feet. A faint spark of electricity started gathering, and his claw, which normally looked almost like a human hand, started glowing blue, almost neon blue as it took the shape of a claw. He slowly took a deep breath right before the fight which would determine if he would gain what he desperately desired or fall before it. He smelt the fresh air of the forest and moist air that seemed to carcass his throat and body. His ocean blue eyes that glowed took on a new appearance as he breathed out. Then he gazed at the angel. He didn't view the angel as an enemy or opponent he must face. Instead, he viewed him as the key to his only salvation. A salvation that he desperately needed. Slowly he took a step, his step slow and steady as if he was just walking normally. Instantly he disappeared, and appeared right behind Moon, claw stretched. Ready to pierce the angel from the back. Kat sighed as she looked at the turned Moon and the Thunder Rabbit Rapim, who stood silently with his gaze distant, probably contemplating what he should do. So no heaven? She quietly muttered as she also prepared to turn around and walk away. But from the corner of her eyes, she noticed that a faint blue light started flickering. Curious, she turned towards it and came face to face with Rapim preparing his attack. His foot slowly inched forward as he walked. Watch out! She barely managed to scream while also hugging her mother, who was right beside her, and jumping left. In the opposite direction, Rapim attacked. Boom-poo, two distinct sounds were heard before everything came to a grinding halt, and a mountain of smoke blared up into the sky. A white, distinct light on the ground where Moon once stood and a blue flashing light in the sky was seen by Kat through the smoke after she got up from the ground. Ah! She made a confused sound, as she still wasn't sure what exactly happened when Rapim attacked just now. The white light that was on the ground shot towards the blue light in the sky like a missile, while also blowing away the dirt and smoke that suddenly appeared. Whoosh! After the white sphere blew away all the smoke, she saw the remains of what happened. A distinct burned smoke slowly wafted out of the place Moon was. Suggesting to Katu that the white sphere is probably Moon and trail of burned smoky ground leading to it, suggesting to Katu that it is probably Rapim who suddenly attacked Sir Moon. What just happened in the smoke? She muttered with a bit of confusion. Suddenly she heard her mother's voice beside her. The urgency was evident in her tone. Let's go. She heard her yell as her arm was tugged and dragged by her mother. The bodyguards who were protecting them went behind and stood face to face with Famt and the guards with tightened expressions, some with even nervousness. But the guards did not escape nor try to hide. I knew you would try something like this. Moon calmly sat as he gazed at Rapim, who managed to break his fall after going over several trees and hitting a few of them. Rapim, while kneeling on the ground, quickly took out a potion, specifically the one Moon made, and gulped it down. To help him recover from the injuries that he received. Puah! Rapim exhaled as he got up. His hood was long gone, and in its place stood a simple dark shirt that was cut in several places. How did you know? Rapim asked while raising one of his eyebrows. Curious as to the reason, the defective angel managed to know that he would attack him right there and there. Not only that, the angel somehow managed to transform the place that he attacked, specifically the place where its wing connected to its body, at just the right movement into a flame. His attack didn't hit it, instead, he became a huge target and the flame that the angel transformed into exploded, sending him flying. Burning his arm which he attacked with and cracking two of his ribs, which thanks to the potion that he drank, was rapidly healing. Rapim's hand slowly shifted to his right and grabbed the bandana that he previously put back. Feeling like he would need every advantage he would need. During this time, his eyes never left the angel, his body lowered and ready to move at a moment's notice. But the angel didn't do anything, it just waited. After tying the bandana and taking out his gauntlet, he took a battle stance. Aren't you looking down on me too much? The angel stayed quiet for a few seconds after his question. Its eyes are in the shape of a golden cross digging into him. A disgusting creature. Rapim muttered to himself as he gazed at the abomination. But after what seemed to be almost 10 seconds, the angel replied. No, I did not. The angel's reply brought forth a frown on his face, feeling belittled by a being who wasn't even in the ultimate class. So be it. He bellowed as he rushed towards Moon. His form was shrouded in the lighting that he manifested, and his hands were covered in his gauntlet as he rushed forward akin to a bullet. I was wrong, I underestimated you. Moon said as he towered over Rapim's figure. Two of his wings, specifically the top left and low right, were crushed with bones visible to the naked eye, and his eyes, which he thought to be almost as tough as adamantium itself, cracked, and a little bit of liquid dripped down his eyes. But the eyes didn't blink, nor did it waver. Meanwhile, Rapim lay on the ground, with all of his limbs cut off and his lower jaw ripped apart. The blood rapidly gushed out like a drain pipe through the openings, dyeing the ground red. Rapim made some questionable sounds using its mouth, which Moon didn't understand as there was no jaw nor tongue to speak of. But the blind desperation and bloodshot eye that cried blood suggested to Moon that he was probably begging or cursing him. Piquing his curiosity. He would have liked to interrogate him and learn what he knew. But he felt that it would be too troublesome with all of its limbs cut off and its jaw shattered. So he manifested a golden bird, the size of an eagle, and willed it to dig into his brain. During this time, Rapim trashed even more violently. During this process, Rapim struggled and thrashed with the valor of a dying banshee. Despite not having limbs, he used his bloody stumps to crawl away, digging and throwing around dirt as it crawled. Its bloodied jaw, specifically the upper jaw, dragged across the ground digging into it as he struggled, but it was all in vain. The bird dragged the soul out of his body, calmly and without any emotion, as the bird was not a living being. Despite not having a soul, his empty husk of a body continued thrashing around and trying to escape. Its ocean blue eyes were dim and empty with no soul. Despite this, his hunk continued struggling. Oh. Moon made a curious sound as he witnessed a being without a soul, still moving, struggling. But the state didn't continue long, as about a minute later, Rapim's body suddenly stopped. Just in time for Moon to finish absorbing Rapim's soul. I should study this phenomenon more. He slowly muttered to himself before turning to the city. Now on to the city. Just as he was about to fly towards the city, from the corner of his vision he saw the bag of holding of Rapim. The content that was inside it glistering under the sun. Before that, let's see if he has anything noteworthy. Chapter 23. Inside the bag, there were 2 potions, specifically those made by him, and several magical artifacts, whose specific effects he didn't know. Still, he could vaguely make out its value by the craftsmanship and the magical signature the artifact radiated, and made the conclusion that they are quite strong artifacts, probably just a tier or 2 lower than what Rapim wore, specifically that bandana and gauntlet. He splashed the potion onto himself as he didn't have a mouth. And the potion's contents disappeared just a second after it touched him. Filling up his holy energy reserve that was about 2/5 full to become 3/5 while also boosting his body's regeneration. Though that took a minute or 2. Click-cube, the bones of his wing made a cracking sound as it corrected itself, causing Moon to feel no insignificant amount of pain. But he endured it, without as much as a twitch. The pain rippled through his body like a slow-moving fire, but it was distant like a scream heard from the depths of a cave. His mind, altered to become beyond human limit, registered the agony without response. No flinch. No hesitation. Only awareness. From the logical perspective, it was without that much flaw, as there was no ancestor to inherit that instinct from, if one doesn't count God. While he was resting a bit, Katu and Kale, along with their bodyguards, emerged from the bushes beside him. Katu's face was covered with splinters and dirt as if she had been dragged across the ground. While Kale's pants were covered in dirt, the rest of their body was clean, at least mostly clean if one doesn't count Katu. So you won. Kale sighed as she walked closer upon seeing him. Her footsteps were slow, and a smile adorned her face. However, that smile turned stiffer as she saw the state Rapim's body was in, specifically the husk of a being that was once called Rapim. Katu, who was also beside her, also saw the corpses, but with a lesser variant of Kale's stiff smile, she crouched down and started poking his corpses. Hey, are you dead? Say something if you are dead. She would quietly mutter as she sat beside it. An act that he ignored. Find a safe place and hide. Moon said, in his usual deep voice. Kale nodded at him. Yeah, I am thinking of doing that, though what are you planning on doing? I am planning on taking what I was promised. Kale's eyes widened in pleasant surprise upon the revelation that the artifact, though to be a lie, truly existed. So, do they have the artifact? Moon's eye slowly shifts from Kale to the city. No, but their clan's vault contains an artifact with the same function. Kale nodded back at him as she slowly shifted her gaze to where Moon was looking, specifically toward the city. There she saw the city transforming into a well-oiled fortress akin to a war machine. With almost 100 or so guards and soldiers on each side of the wall and almost a dozen in each massive watchtower. The bowman's hand clutched around their bow and the soldier's weapon drawn and ready to spill blood as they stood guard. The soldiers were of various races, kobold, troll, orc, and mink. But the mink, orc was the majority while the lizardman was just behind them ranking third. Their armor gleamed under the sunlight, and their weapons clanked against the wall itself as they stood ready. The steady sound of footsteps, the clanking of arrows, and the shouting of superior officers dimmed the atmosphere and conveyed to those civilians who were inside the city that a battle would take place soon. Second after second, minute after minute, time continued to run as they got ready. Some catapults were placed on the walls as they started loading it up. But none ventured out of the city. Orcs, lizardmen, not even the minks. Gazing at it, she started feeling worried for Moon. Her eyebrow furrowed in worry as she turned to Moon. "I'll follow you." Moon turned to Kale, his gaze boring down on her as if saying, "No, you would not." Thought his gaze. Kale understood it fully, but she stood firm and resolute as she endured the invisible pressure his gaze cast down on her shoulder. It continued for a few seconds, her stubborn gaze against Moon's blinding gaze. But she remained steady and resolute against him. So, as if he accepted her determination, he turned back to the city. "Up to you," he said while doing so. Kale nodded at him with determination, after which she turned around to Katu to tell her to go to safety. But she didn't see her. She should have been behind her, but she was gone. After turning left and right for a second, she saw her. She was following Moon with a big, full smile on her face. As if she noticed her gaze, Katu turned back to her. "Let's go and kick some ass," she yelled as she shadow-boxed the air. Her eyes were glowing and glistering like gems and her mouth curved upwards. Her excitement and confidence were clear, though no one knew if she was confident in herself or Moon. She slightly smiled in response and shook her head upon seeing this picture, after which she also followed behind Moon. And behind her, the clanking of her bodyguard's boots was heard as they also followed after her. Widening her smile even further, Bernard, the simple bowman, took a deep breath as he clutched his bow tighter. His brow furrowed, casting deep shadows over his narrowed eyes as he gazed at some sort of monster who was fighting the Thunder Rabbit himself, without problem. Although it might just be his imagination, Thunder Rabbit seems to be losing. Thunder Rabbit launched into the sky only to be intercepted mid-air. The monster moved too fast. A blur of tendrils and searing light. Crash. Thunder Rabbit slammed into the ground, rolling to his feet, breath ragged. He attacked. A counter-strike. A flash of steel and mana. But the monster was relentless. For every wound it took, it inflicted 2 more. And slowly but surely, the monster was grinding him. A little by little but without stopping or slowing down. When the last explosion sounded, it suddenly stopped, and tranquility returned to the city. But the sky was cloudy and the air was damp, cueing to Bernard that rain might be coming. The distant sound of orcs' bellows sounded from the distance, cursing unfortunate ones. "Why the fuck are we not helping?" Beside him, his captain muttered through gritted teeth. His captain's knuckles were white, and a crease formed between his eyes, his jaw tightening as if biting back to prevent himself from doing a foolish thing. He could understand him, as his leader was a mink, and to see their leader, the pillar of their clan, no, even beyond that, a living legend of their clan being slowly grinded to death must have been rage-inducing, if not maddening. But he still couldn't understand why the head of the 2 clans had barred anyone from going out of the city. As normally the city should have sent every manpower it could muster to protect the Thunder Rabbit, following the ancient agreement the 3 clans' ancestors made. At least from what he knows instead, the 2 clans not doing anything confusing to quite a few people, including him. Nevertheless, because he doesn't have any authority or strength, he decides to bury that doubt deep into his heart. Just as it seemed like the tranquility would continue on forever, the monster came out of the forest, followed by 2 goblin women. He identified one of them as the owner of the biggest alchemy shop in the city, the richest person in the city, and her daughter. Talented goblin who has immense talent and has reached late low class despite her young age. Followed by her bodyguards who are all massive and of immense strength. Though nothing much compared to that monster who is at the front. "Steady your aim," his captain shouted beside him while also pulling the strings of his bow. And throughout the city, the other watchtowers and on the walls, archers and some mages started preparing just like them. But through the edge of his vision, he saw his captain's hand tremble and blood trickling down his fingers because of how hard he pulled. Suddenly the monsters started flying high into the sky, straight up towards the sky, sending gusts of wind so strong that even he from this far distance heard the piercing and blowing sound of the wind. 30 meters above the ground, 50-80 when the monster reached 80 meters. The monster suddenly stopped. The monster's eyes are akin to a sun pressing down on him, no, on everyone's shoulder. "Give me what is owed, and I shall leave," the monster said, its voice for some reason reaching every corner of the city, despite the absurdity of it. The soldiers who stood on the ground and the pedestrians who were in their homes in fear all stayed quiet upon the question imposed upon them. For they did not want anything to do with it. In fact, for those soldiers that stood on the walls of the city, the soldiers who saw the monster rip apart massive trees like they were fragile branches, destroying hills like they were sandcastles during its fight against Thunder Rabbit, they wanted to just give in to its demand. But their superiors, uncertainty about what would happen to them if they did anything that might count as cowardliness or betrayal, prevented them from doing anything. But while the quiet guards remained stationed and the frightened civilians hid in their homes, the city's elites strode specifically. People from the three clans marched through the streets, galloping on the ground, weighting down the very air itself as they strode forward. Each of the elites was at least middle class with a hardened expression and scars of various sizes and depths that foretold the history of the 1,000 battles they had endured. Each time their legs touched the ground, they broke it and left their footprints on it as the ground beneath them gave in before their legs did. At their head were the two clan leaders of orcs and lizardmen, respectively. Both of them with a piercing deep gaze that sent shivers down anyone's back and monstrous pressure. You will get nothing, beast. Retreat now, or face the consequences. The lizardman leader shouted as he skillfully maneuvered his spears. Behind him, the elites of his clans stood. Meanwhile, beside him, the orc clan leader, Bulgar, turned left towards the lizardman clan leader and huffed, as if mocking him for being cowardly. After which he pulled out his massive hammer from his back, and bellowed. If you want it, come and get it, you beast. Sending a blast of air as the orc clan leader ran even faster towards the wall, no. Towards the beast in the sky. The lizardman clan leader's expression hardened through the scales that adorned his face. But he didn't say anything as he also ran towards the wall. What a mess. Bernard muttered as he shifted his aim from the monster in the sky to the two goblins and the group of guards who were on the ground. Some of his team followed after him as well, as they weren't confident that they could hit anything that was so high up in the sky. So be it. He heard the monster say as the monster suddenly stopped fluttering its wings and started falling towards the ground at an even faster speed than before. The monster was akin to the fastest of arrows, as a sharp, screaming whoosh tore through the sky as it fell. Just as it seemed like the monster would hit the ground, it suddenly spread its wing and did a 90-degree change. Flying straight towards the city wall. Boo-oompa, he didn't remember what happened after that. Everything was a blend of darkness, confusion, the ringing noise that blared in his ear, and pain as he lay there under a thick wooden plank in the ruins of the tower he once stood. He tried pushing the big log that was stuck on top of his leg but to no avail. Instead, a train of pain flooded in as his brain finally registered the pain he was in. His breath was hitched, and it felt impossible to take a breath. With only the smallest and shallowest breath possible, barely enough for him to survive. Fuck. He cursed, as that was the only thing he could do at the moment. The faint drops of water fell on top of him, cueing him that rain was coming. He took a few deep breaths, at least trying to breathe through the barely functional throat that he could, and opened his eyes to inspect the surroundings. The sight that greeted him was a grim and dark burning building, broken apart houses, and shops. Crying and begging civilians and enraged and maddened soldiers marching towards a massive beast. Who, for some reason, became even bigger than previously. The beast was previously only about 2 meters in diameter, now it is almost 4, and there were flames surrounding it. What happened? He muttered. He looked around with his only functioning right eye as the other won't open and saw a civilian hiding in the rubble beside him. Hey, Huff, what the hell happened? He said it, but it came out as weak and shallow. The civilian, as if hit by something, yelped and hid farther away from view and deeper into the shadow. Upon seeing it, a faint anger surged beneath him. Getting exhausted and half dead didn't help much either, as it only fueled it even further. You there, what happened? He screamed towards the civilian. The civilian stopped yelping, looked around for a bit, and started sneaking closer to him. And when the civilian, whom he thought to be a weak civilian woman or child, turned out to be a big, burly orc. An orc, which he was familiar with, extremely surprised him. The orc was a bartender and owner of the biggest pub in the city and a man who wouldn't normally flinch under most circumstances. Ready to go hand in hand at any time. But the orc was also peculiar, as the orc always wore that weird white shirt despite his massive muscles and took no insult from anyone towards his little mustache. Yeah. The orc quietly whispered while hiding right beside him, probably from the monster who was still fighting in the middle of the city. What happened? Bernard asked while trying to hide the surprise he felt at how polite and quiet it sounded, in contrast to his burly frame. The orc stayed quiet for a few seconds, sounding unsure, causing Bernard's breath to start rising again. But the orc didn't take long. The thing, it entered the core part of the city. Bernard stopped for a few seconds, after which he asked. Start from the very beginning when that thing rammed into the wall. What happened? The orc scratched the back of his head quietly and nodded. Okay, But be quiet, okay? It might notice us. Chapter 24. I don't know every detail, but at least from what I saw, when that thing rammed into the boom, a massive explosion happens from beside them as buildings and houses fall apart like clay, causing the orc to yelp in startled surprise as he hid his body even further into the shadow. Bernard, stuck under the pillar, turned towards the city's core, where he heard screams and begging of a few people, which at the next second disappeared. Damn it, why did it come to this? He would unconsciously mutter to himself, his eyes brown furrowed and eyes turned into a slit. He tightened his fist and stuck the pillar that was on top of him with such force that he bled. The warm blood trickled down his hand as he gazed upon the chaos. Chaos that had arrived only an hour ago, yet it swept in like a storm, tearing everything apart. His home. His city. Everything he had ever cherished gone. He felt a range of emotions as he gazed upon the burning city and the smaller explosion that was happening. First, it was denial, anger, and fury, then it was wheezing acceptance. Wheezing acceptance that his family, one that has been together with him since his birth, mother and father, his fiancée Birian, and future child that was in her stomach, is probably dead. He might have denied it or hoped for them to be alive and well, if the explosion wasn't happening just where his house was. Or the fact that his parents are too old to move and his fiancée, Birian, who was 9 months pregnant, couldn't get out of bed in recent days. But still, just the smallest bit of hope lingered in his heart, buried under the intense emotion that was changing by the second. A hope that despite most of his feelings changing every second rapidly, akin to a typhoon, he still clung onto that very corner with desperation. After a few seconds of a few smaller explosions, it stopped. Not the fight itself, as Bernard continued to hear the war cries of his brother in arms and the cries of civilians. The orc, as the explosion reduced, came out of the shadow of the rubble. Alright, where was I? The orc scratched the back of his head. When that thing rammed into the city wall gave in like it was brittle wood. Then, the blocks of the city wall flew and rained down on the city, and one of the blocks hit your watchtower, the consequence of which you can see. And because of the broken wall and the massive impact, a massive amount of smoke rose. And in the smoke, the orc inched closer to him. That thing stood without moving. Lines etched across his face and cast a shadow down his face as he listened. The orc was explaining too rapidly and quietly. The words in and of themselves were much to be desired, but still, he couldn't hope for more from him, judging by how he acted. The orc's breath started becoming labored and quick. At that time, I thought, that thing was dazed because of the impact, as the thing hit the city wall using its size. Then I saw it. A strange, almost liquid mist drifts toward the creature. I initially thought it was just some sort of telekinesis or something, but upon closer inspection, I discovered that they were souls of the fallen. And that thing was devouring it, consuming it. There was even one soul who was fully conscious and aware. The orc looked down onto the ground as the light of the burning city cast a shadow down his face. And she was begging me to save her. If not, destroy her. When I asked her, why? She answered that she doesn't want to become one with that thing, she doesn't want to become one with the hundreds of others before her. But before I could ask more questions, the pulling force on her became stronger, and she was dragged across, no longer capable of staying in one place. Orc hid even further from the light of the burning city. And at the next second, as if to prove what she said, that thing started regenerating rapidly, its injured wing, straightening, and feathers rapidly started growing out of it. And in just a minute, it almost fully recovered. The 2 clan leaders at that time should have attacked. But they did not, they just fucking waited outside the smoke like fools while that thing was preparing himself, healing, and recovering the energy it expended, wasting away Thunder Rabbit's sacrifice like fucking leeches. And I saw everything because I was on top of Kephine's tower. The orc's breath hitched. His single eye widened, pupils dilating as madness flickered across his gaze. He clenched his fists, nails digging into his palm, yet his trembling voice betrayed him. Every single moment, frame by frame. The orc finally said. When the smoke died down, it was already too late. That thing has already mostly recovered, and it even started glowing like the sun, yellowish white. But at that time, because 2 clan leaders and their soldiers were there, I thought it would be fine, nothing would happen, and they would destroy that thing, and peace would return just like it did a decade ago. The orc started explaining faster and faster as his pupils rapidly changed sizes. Then the fight started. At first, the 2 clan leaders and their subordinates had the advantage. Every time the monster attacked, the clan leader and all their subordinates attacked with even more power, sometimes tumbling and sending the beast flying like a ball. Little by little, it looked like we were winning. Bernard frowned at the word were. Any word that was used in past terms in such a desperate situation would never have a good meaning. Never in a million years. So he, using his limited mobility, moved a bit to the right, letting the light that was previously blocked by his head fall on the orc's face, and noticed the orc's face was ashen white and its pupils extremely large. At that time, I was too foolish. I should have escaped when I had the chance. Instead, I waited. I waited. In the end, I waited. Too long. Every second, my mind screamed to run to leave it all behind and save my family. But I hesitated. And that hesitation cost me everything. Orc said while clenching his fist tightly. Every fucking thing. He screamed as he drove his fist towards the ground, creating a crate the size of his fist on the ground. After which he covered his face with his hands. He took a few deep breaths to calm down and regain his composure. After what seemed to be a minute or two, the orc finally calmed down enough to continue. Only 20 minutes later did I start noticing the change. Every time, the monster absorbed the soul on the battlefield. Every time, the monster's flame evaporated soldiers. He was growing stronger and stronger. He grew bigger, faster, and more powerful. No longer did the orc leader's mighty hammer send the creature flying, no longer did the lizardman leader's spear pierce that thing's wings. And one by one, elite ones fell. Now, probably just a few are left. Then the orc stopped. He stopped muttering his quiet and rapid explanation, cueing Bernard that was all the orc knew. So he stayed still for a few seconds after that, letting the wind ruffle his clothes and occasional drops to cool his head as he lay there under the pillar. To clear his head and determine what he should do next. A second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds he stayed quiet as he lay there quietly, just like his dead comrades who lay beside him. Sometimes, his eye under the eyelid would rapidly shift. Sometimes, his breath would turn rapid as if the pillar wasn't only crushing his leg, but also his chest. About a kilometer or two away from them, on the other side of the city, stood Katu and Kale, along with their bodyguards. Their body was adorned with only a few cuts and bruises, despite having fought tens of beings in the past 20 or so minutes, a testament to their capabilities, one might say, or the unveiling of their vulnerability, the rest would say. But in the end, for them to only get this much injured is quite an achievement. They moved through the shadows, going between the houses, maneuvering between tricky situations as they marched between buildings. Their destination, the Mink clan ground, in Prospect, their vault. The city reeked of sulfur and burning buildings, causing her and her mother to frown as they marched. Their footsteps were quiet as they moved through the shadows. "How far are we?" she asked her mother once again. "We are here." Kale, her mother, answered back. As soon as she heard those words, she quickly ran towards where Kale was. And around the corner, she saw it, a beautiful, massive medieval castle with an enormous garden filled with flowers of various colors. Despite having smelled sulfur and burning just moments ago, she now smelled a flowery scent. "Wow!" she muttered. Her eyes widened, and her legs stopped walking as she stood there stunned. Feeling shocked that the mansion she had heard of in the past, the main base of the Mink clan, was this big. She initially thought it would, at best, be 2 or 3 times bigger than their shop and their house, but no, the mansion was almost 10 times bigger. With fountains, gardens, and towers of various sizes. Kale, her mother, tugged at her hand, causing Katu to wake up from her shock. "Let's go," she heard her mother mutter as they started circling the mansion. After circling the mansion a bit, they entered the mansion through the side door. Which, due to the chaos that was spreading in the city, was left unguarded. The inside of the castle was just as luxurious as the outside, filled with paintings and furniture of immense value. Adorned with plants that were even rarer than those outside. It glistered and caused the hallway to smell like the garden outside while also calming the minds of those who walked through the halls. But they didn't have the luxury to wonder and admire the beauty as they were on a mission. At least everyone except Katu was. She was admiring the beauty of the place like a stunned child while half-heartedly searching for the vault. As, in her words, Moon is winning. They don't need to worry about anything. Not like the Minks would destroy the artifact. The only leverage that they could possibly use. Kale wanted to scold her, pull her ear, and drag her around, but she refrained from it, thinking it wasn't the time. Though she had written it in her little mental book. And the fact that she was only fleetingly admiring instead of standing like a fool also helped. So they started searching for the vault, which for some reason was unexpectedly hard to find. They traveled from room to room, section to section, but to no avail. And the stacks of bodies that they left became almost as big as a mound. Most of them are low class with only a few middle class. Even those in the middle class are at the very bottom of the middle class, making Kale and Katu's work much easier. But there was also a con to this, as there was no high-ranking clan member present in the mansion. In Prospect, it meant that there was not a single being who knew where the main vault was located, they only knew some side vaults. Which don't have what they need. Just as they were thinking if they should leave and go to the battlefield. Grab an injured high-ranking member and interrogate him or her. Katu, ironically, the least focused member of their party, stumbled upon the main vault. How? Kale sighed as she massaged her forehead. Getting confused and a bit flustered at the fact that Katu, who in all fairness should have the least amount of possibility of finding the vault, found it. And Katu, who stood beside her, said, "Because I am the best," she said while crossing her arms. A smug expression was adorned on her face. Probably feeling happy and satisfied at the fact that she managed to find it. Kale just shook her head as she got to work. "Ariel," Kale called out, the only female among her bodyguards. A female harpy got out of the line of guards and got to work, together with Kale, to disable the arrays of formations and traps that were hidden from the naked eye around the vault. Initially, it would have been extremely difficult, if not outright impossible, to enter the mansion, find the vault, disable the alarms, and turn off all the formations without anyone noticing. Especially with the added fact that they didn't even know where it was located. Heck, Rapem even engraved every formation in the room to sound the alarm and inform him if someone did. But because Rapem died and the alarm, which should have sounded, malfunctioned due to it, they unknowingly crossed the biggest hurdle, with only some basic alarms and formations still working. And Ariel is more than capable of turning off those still working. Just as they started working, they heard a deafening roar, shaking the very foundation of the castle they were in, while also causing cracks to form through the castle as it shook. Rua Arkatu's leg wobbled as she tried to stand up on her feet. She said as she steadied her leg while grabbing the pillar beside her. What was that? She wondered out loud as she looked out the window, her eyes wide with surprise and confusion. There, in the distance, just beyond the mountain, a small speck of shadow was visible. No bigger than a strand of hair. And it was getting bigger fast. Chapter 25. In the core of the city, where the rich and strongest lived, a battle could be seen taking place. 6 figures were fighting an eyeball-like monster with a diameter of 5 meters and 2 pairs of wings glowing with a golden color akin to a flame. The 6 figures, all of them without exception, were high class. Granted, only 2 clan leaders were at the top of the high-class hierarchy while the rest were at the bottom, but still. For another high-class being, especially for one that is not at the very top of the high class, to fight against all 6 of them without losing ground would be unheard of. At least for those without sacred gear or help from a third party who is of a higher tier than them. Then there is Moon, who is pushing and steadily gaining ground against them. The only reason for them being capable of withstanding this long is their loyal subordinate rushing toward their death, which is Moon, without caring about their lives or what will happen to those left behind by them. Granted, for those who have such zealots, loyalty is rare and far between. But through generations upon generations of selective incubation by the clan's chiefs, they had a sizable amount of zealots who were ready to lay down their lives. But no matter how many generations there are, it is impossible to have an immense number of them since a living being is a byproduct of desire and will, and to direct that desire and turn it into loyalty is hard. So there were only about 3 or so hundred zealots currently alive inside the city despite hundreds of years of existence of their city, which is dwindling by the second. From the 6 high-class beings' perspective, especially the 2 clan leaders, the situation couldn't get any worse. They were burning through their stamina like crazy, using immensely powerful attacks or spells every minute or so. And the number of their zealous subordinates is lessening and lessening. To add salt to the wound, the monster they were fighting was only getting stronger and stronger every time it devoured the souls of the fallen, becoming bigger, faster, and stronger, causing them to have no little amount of despair as they fought. The only silver lining, that is, preventing them from giving up and fleeing or just giving up and letting the inevitable happen, would be their clansmen who are currently evacuating and their loved ones, who were depending on them. But one's perspective is never right, as unknown to all of them, the monster they were fighting against, the one that was pushing them to the brink of despair, wasn't feeling so good himself. I am going to puke, Moon thought as he tried to stop himself from puking out all the souls that he had eaten today. His wings started sometimes contrasting and twitching against his will, and he started hearing the begging of those souls inside his mind, sometimes even the flashes of their lives. Their wails as they struggle to break free from his clutches. The mothers that are begging for their sons' and daughters' souls to be freed. Some fathers' souls worming their way to where their families were located and covered their souls with theirs as they struggled and protected their loved ones even in the afterlife. The nauseous feeling that permeated and became stronger every time he devoured a soul, every movement he made after, only made it worse. Please, just my son, please. He heard one of the souls wailing inside his mind. And along with noises and shrieking that came along with it. With a flash, a brief life history of the soul came into his mind. She was a prostitute who was, as a child, sold to the brothel by her parents and forced into the path of low life itself. Every day was hell for her, as she was used and played with like a toy just for the scraps that those would-be customers left behind. They whipped and hit her as they enjoyed themselves, as she was only a low-level prostitute among the hierarchy of the brothel, even below the cleaners, as she was a slave, not a worker. Every day, It was torture. Every second ticked so slowly that she just wished she could just end herself here and there. But unfortunately, the slave choker that was around her neck prevented her from doing anything deemed unprofitable to the brothel. She shed enough tears to fill up a large pool. She was raped more times than she could count. Her eyes slowly lost their luster as she slowly died mentally. With only the cheap smell of cigarettes and disgustingly thick, cheap perfume as her only constant company. Just as life seemed to be an endless abyss without an end, a miracle happened. She gave birth to a child who, despite being born from a harlot of the lowest degree, was beautiful and pure. In sharp contrast to her, who already started losing her feathers despite only being in her mid-20s. Her baby had black feathers growing from her back, in contrast to her dull brown and pure, jewel-like green eyes that reflected her appearance. Like a calm lake where she once went with her father, when her father wasn't a gambling addict. And her mother wasn't a drug addict. Upon seeing her, her first instinct was to protect her and escape from this hell together. But that wouldn't be possible as she was marked to live all her life as a slave. So, despite her reluctance, she gave her up to an orphanage just a week after her birth. Her instinct at that time screamed at her that she was no better than her parent and that she truly deserved living like this, but the logical part squashed that part of her mercilessly, causing her already dull eyes to dim even further. Her hand at that time trembled, and her leg nearly gave out, but she endured it and left her daughter outside the orphanage using one of the rare favors that she managed to gain through the years. From then on, she had something to look forward to. Something to hope and dream. Hoping that one day, her daughter would live the life she never could and enjoy the delicacies that only she dreamed of. Every week or so, she would scrape everything she had and send it to her daughter. In hopes that she would grow up healthy and energetic, as the food situation in the orphanage wasn't that good. As every year, 1 or 2 children would always starve to death. This cycle continued for a few years. Her baby, although she couldn't meet and talk to her, grew up beautifully. Raven black hair and emerald-like eyes sparkled with innocence and curiosity. Her daughter was a curious one, as she would always want to learn many things. Using what she had and a few nights without sleep, she even managed to get her a book. A decayed and old book was all she managed to get, but her daughter loved it. As she saw her always carrying it around whenever she was playing or doing some simple chores. In contrast, she, on the other hand, started losing weight, her skin started losing its healthy color, dark circles started appearing under her eyes, and she started losing the few customers that she had, causing the already meager scraps to reduce. But still, thinking that she probably wouldn't live that long, she gave what she had to her daughter. And about a day ago, her body finally gave in, and she was discarded into the streets. The one who would bury her would come the day after tomorrow. Until then, she would wait for her death, slowly waiting for the inevitable that will happen. At that time, her mind was hazy, and some random question appeared in her mind. Why did they not finish me off? The naive part of her asked the weary and torn side of her mind. And the torn and broken part of her replied. Because they don't want us smelling like shit when that person who would be burying us came around. The naive side of her nodded with an innocent expression with big, wide eyes that reflected a calm lake, an expression that the broken side had long forgotten. Would my daughter be okay? The naive, childish side asked, her voice chirping like a bird, energetic and happy. Her broken and ripped to pieces side of her mind replied. Probably would die, the situation of the city is getting worse. The naive side nodded, her expression still one of innocent wonder, the kind only a child could have. It was a part of her that had never grown, always clinging to the hope of that fateful day when her parent would finally come to take her away. Away from this nightmare that was her life. Away from the harsh truth that the possibility of her daughter ending up the same would be high. Just as it seemed like she would find her eternal peace. The monster came. That thing devoured and consumed everything without differentiating anyone nor anything. That thing didn't favor the strong, nor did it pity the weak, for that thing, all beings were equal. Its monstrous eyes didn't even show a ripple as it consumed all who were unfortunate enough to get in its way. That thing at first glance looked like a truly awe-inspiring being, with its pristine wings and deep and, for some reason, calming aura it had. But at the second glance, it appeared like an eldritch monstrosity, and the fact that it was massacring everything and everyone didn't help, only making it even more paradoxical beast. Causing her heart, which had stopped long ago, to throb once more before her eventual death. Moon blinked as he felt his mind return to the present. The sudden clarity gushed into his brain as he awoke from that flashback that he got from that harpy's soul. The third one that he had since he started absorbing souls in such high volume. The first one caused him to lose focus for a second, and the second one caused him to lose focus for half a second. Now, it was only 1/4 of a second, a massive improvement. A thing that he should be happy about. But he wasn't, as every time he had a flashback of the souls he devoured, he felt like he was losing a small part of himself. A part of him that made him Moon, a part of him that made him who he was, forever. He felt terrified and lonely every time it happened, but just a millionth of a second after it happened, he would regain his calm, a calm that one should have while relaxing on a rainy day, not when one is fighting and massacring countless. And the small part of him that was foreign to him, reveling in the change for that part, viewing it as a boom instead of a curse. Which caused Moon to start panicking only for it to disappear the next second. His mind returned to the present as sound started registering in his mind as he viewed what happened outside his body. There he saw all of his enemies dead or half dead on the ground, and he in the sky, on top of them, about to devour their souls. But before he did that, he let go of the souls of both the daughter and the mother, along with hundreds of other children or beings who suffered the same fate. The fate of not being granted the freedom that one should have while living, not being granted the joy of living in the world of the living, so he granted them the freedom in death. Instantly, hundreds of souls rushed out of him and disappeared into the sky, some flying towards a destination while some just dissipating in the sky. But his size and power didn't decrease as the 6 high-class beings and the soldiers who were dying through the city still flew to him to get absorbed by him. Slowly, he floated up to the sky as he basked in the light rain that had started just a 10 or so minutes prior as he reveled in the monstrous power that he now wielded. Some part of the power he wielded is temporary, as only part of the souls and beings burned by him is absorbed, yet it is undeniable that he currently wielded a power equal to the ultimate class being. No, not just a low ultimate class, by his estimation, he is probably about peak mid-ultimate class. And he had a feeling that after digesting these souls, he would evolve into a ultimate class being. A sky-breaking, earth-shaking roar sounded in the distance, shaking the whole city in just one deafening roar that is akin to a shockwave of a nuclear blast as that sound spreads. With a shadow in the distance being the culprit. Third party? Moon inquired as he turned around and flew towards the Mink clan castle, specifically towards where the artifact that was capable of teleporting him out of the underworld was located. The sheer energy that the being in the distance radiated increased the gravity around him, causing not a few low-class beings to fall to the ground, defenseless. And that is from such a long distance. If that shadow came, it would be big trouble. Moon thought as he increased his speed even further and flew toward the Mink clan castle as he knew by instinct that he was no match for that shadow in the distance. Tiamat is an old dragon. Old even to the dragons, not just to humans and short-lived races. As one of the 5 dragon kings, it was expected for her to be old. But there were plenty of dragons even older than her, so she wasn't concerned. In fact, in dragon culture, ancient dragons are highly respected as those who have lived eons upon eons are most of the time extremely powerful or adorned with wisdom that surpasses any short-lived species. But the words wisdom and Tiamat the chaos karma don't go well together, a fact that she knew. But still, she wouldn't call herself an idiot or something like that. In fact, she was plenty smart, just that compared to other ancient beings like gods and other ancient dragons, she couldn't shine as much as she wished. But she made up what she lacked with undeniable and pure strength that earned her rightful place as the strongest among dragon kings, which in prospect means that she was a being just below the dragon gods, surpassing thousands upon thousands of other dragons and gods in pure strength. And thanks to her strength and senses, she was among the best. So when Tiamat sensed a holy energy of ultimate class angel in the underworld, in her territory, it surprised her, but not so much, as she had just woken up after a good nap. A nap. She took a nap after she earned an artifact, specifically called Dragon Spear. So she, in both curiosity and annoyance, flew to where she sensed the angel. And there in the distance, between the hills, she saw it. That angel, which for some reason looked like a flying eyeball, was destroying the small city that inhabited her forest without care or worry, as if that angel had nothing to worry about. As if that angel didn't enter the underworld, specifically her forest, but instead was in heaven or heaven's territory. This increased her annoyance, as sometimes, every few decades, she would come here and take away some treasures as tax for living in her forest. Now, the tax she could have would probably be reduced as they would probably take a significant amount of time to recover, a time which they could have used to collect or create treasures for her. Roar, she roared towards that angel, trying to stop it from doing any more damage to her sheep. No, her people. The ground shook, and the wind blew as the trees around her bent as if an invisible giant was crushing them, while also causing the angel to stop in its tracks. But, just a second later, the angel flew towards one of the castles. What is that angel doing? She wondered as she gazed upon the angel, who flew towards the castle instead of fleeing, like any being who met her probably should, deciding that she should hurry up, in case that angel killed more of her people. She increased her speed and blasted towards the little city akin to a speeding bullet with the size of a multiple whale comb together. Chapter 26 Moon shot towards the Mink clan's castle, his wings becoming an afterimage as he flew, cutting through the air despite his humongous size that otherwise should have slowed him down immensely. The wind resistance and the sheer weight would be too much, but fortunately, the laws of this world were weaker and more bendable compared to his previous life's world. Or it might just be that there are more primordial laws compared to his previous life. And in just a second, he was almost at the castle. A mere meters away, there was the castle window, and beyond, about 20 meters away from him, were Kale and Katu, standing outside the vault. And in the hands of Kale lay a totem that radiated an undeniable aura of space. Quite possibly the artifact. At least that was the thing he hoped. If they did not, chances are, he probably wouldn't be seeing the rising of tomorrow's sun. But unfortunately, just before he crashed through the walls of the castle, a humongous shadow suddenly appeared behind him and loomed just a few meters away from him, bearing down an immense pressure upon him as it quietly stood, watching. After that, it was a blend of confusion and dizziness as he was sent flying by the thing that appeared behind him. Time seemed to suspend as he traveled with the speed that he had never had as he crashed through houses like sand castles and city walls like a twig as he consecutively burst through them. Boom 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 boom. Following behind him was the trail of destruction in his wake as the holes he made and the houses that he sent through slowly fell apart and crashed to the ground. And through the forced flight that he was forced to take, 10 or so civilians were crushed. Some, because the house they were in crashed onto them, and 2, because they were in the way of his trajectory, right where he was sent flying. They were crushed into bits of gore and flesh as they both blended into one big pile of flesh. R.I.P. for the mother and daughter pair who were hiding in the closet, and just a second after the crash, Moon shook himself out of the dizziness and confusion and flew towards the sky. His wings cut the air apart as they cleared away the smoke and dirt that had risen. He spread his immense 2 pairs of wings in full display and his eye blazed akin to a sun as he prepared a spell of his own, while looking at the Mink clan castle and its surroundings. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing. Nowhere was the shadow that appeared behind him. He expected an instant follow-up attack, even an explosion of spells raining upon him. But there was none. Nothing suggests that anything attacked him. Nothing to show that he was attacked except for the purple bruise that he got and the flight path that he was forced to take. Instead, there was only a blend of calm chaos and burning houses with only a few beings present in the city. Where? Moon muttered as he surveyed his surroundings. Then suddenly a dark shadow appeared in front of him, casting its shadow into him and almost fully blocking the sun from reaching him as it towered over him. The being was a pale blue western dragon with celestial blue scales that seemed to suck the very essence of the sky itself, and the thick draconic pressure that accompanied the being was one of which he never saw as it nearly felled him. Only nearly as this time, Moon was prepared. He transformed his body into a flame for a brief second, just when the claw of the dragon swept through him, burning the claw in the process, and while in a flame form, he gathered a huge amount of holy energy enhanced by his flaming ability and sent it towards the chest of the dragon in the form of flaming spear. Infernal javelin. Moon silently though in his mind a massive explosion happens as Moon's attack hits the dragon point blank. First, it was the deafening roar that split the very air apart, shaking the very ground around him into smithereens as it tore open the sky, revealing the permanent twilight color of the underworld sky. Then it was the screeching of the explosion that tore open and shook the very particles of the world as it covered the world in chaos, rupturing the eardrums of any being who was unfortunate enough to be beside them. A massive amount of heat accompanied the sound soon after as it blasted away and round the part of the forest they were on, turning any trees into charcoal and evaporating lakes until there was nothing left, along with all the fish that inhabited it. For a brief moment, time seemed to stop between them as Moon and the dragon, which Moon was guessing to be Tiamat the Chaos Karma Dragon, locked gazes. Moon's inhumane gaze that never once blinked since its existence against Tiamat's blue platinum draconic slit pupils that spoke of power. Then it was the silent showdown between them, a challenge that was never spoken, and the rules that were never uttered as they both locked gazes, waiting for the other to blink and for the time to resume once again. They gazed at each other in the silent world, Moon inspecting Tiamat's body and the wings, and Tiamat gazing at the angel's eyes and wings, which for some bizarre reason contained thousands of souls, who, just like the angel in front of her, was gazing at her with their own gazes. Some were filled with hope and some with madness as they clawed at her. Most of them were still squirming and resisting as they crawled towards her, through the binds of the angel before her, as if she was a beacon of hope for them. The only beacon they could find in the endless hell that awaited them. She slowly shifted her gaze towards the angel's pupil, to the inhumane gaze of the angel who had that innocent and pure glint that all angels who haven't fallen had. The one which they wore as they massacred all who stood against them, not caring whether they were elderly or children for their one and only God. As if any action they did, under their God's will, became righteous and fair, they executed his will to burn down millions and cast more to eternal damnation. But just a second after they executed God's will, they would return to those normal, peace-loving angels who were willing to sacrifice their lives and help those in need without expecting anything in return. But she wasn't one to judge, as she had done worse things. After all, she didn't earn her title as a Dragon King by just lazing around or sparring with fellow dragons. But suddenly, something changed. The air twisted. It was thick, as though it clung to her scales, then thin, as though it evaporated altogether. The world around her seemed to bend, not in the way the wind might shift, but in ways that made her aware of every breath, every movement unnatural, like the very space was breathing her in. And then, that angel's gaze. It shifted. But no, that wasn't right. It wasn't a shift, it was a tearing, as if the gaze tore open a void or portal. Then, she felt a gaze, an eldritch, wrongful gaze that cast its twisted ideology upon her mind as that being observed. The owner of that gaze warped the space around her as it extended its reach towards her, as if wanting to drag her to it. Maniacal panic set in as she tried to force her way through it, but it was to no avail, as if the very space around her solidified into an extremely solid block as it blocked her and prevented her from moving a muscle. But she didn't stop or give up, as she continued trying to break free despite already learning it was futile, just like how it was instinct for any being to struggle until the end. While her body was busy struggling against it, her mind went through her ancient memories rapidly as it looked for ways and clues to what was happening. Through the ancient memory akin to the oldest of grimoires, one that recorded her eons upon eons of experience. In one corner, on the edge of the forgotten, under the heavy dust, she remembered the warning of the ancients. The only instance in her ancient memory when she saw those primordial dragons tremble as they warned her. A word that they, after minutes upon minutes of shaking and breakdown, managed to utter. Beware of the horrors beyond the stars, those who cast despair even to those already dead. Outer gods, her mind, uttered without her notice, took a sharp intake of breath in the frozen world as her pupils rapidly changed sizes and her scale. Is the owner of this gaze an outer god? No, it feels different from the ones the ancients spoke of. A small part of her, her logical side, continued to look for ways to survive this ordeal. Outer gods, a whisper that was never spoken clawed at the edges of her mind, an echo from the abyss. They did not speak in words but in concepts, unraveling any being's understanding of time, of reality. All primordial gods and ancient dragons spoke of them in hushed tones beneath the cover of the sun. They spoke of them as beings beyond every possible concept, law, and existence itself. They warned the younger ones never to utter their name or even mention them, as if they do, the very existence itself might cease to exist. For those who live beyond the stars might find them or make them aware of their fleeting world and existence. The platinum blue scale took on the shade of deep ocean blue, as if turning pale as her claw scarred the ground. Then she noticed it, the feeling, this cursed feeling that she was feeling was coming from the angel in front of her. One, which she thought was annoying and weak. One that, she thought, she could easily get rid of. The wings of the angel in front of her were changing, contrasting, and morphing as they moved, not as wings but something more. More than what a limb can do, more than a wing could possibly do, as it dug into the very space itself. Her breath caught not from pain, nor from shock, but from the stark, undeniable realization that she would die soon. No action, no desperate struggle, would change that outcome. Her body accepted it before her mind did. Yet her soul refused. The soul of Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon, refused as it rampaged. Cursing her feeble body and instinct that for some reason bowed before her, the true owner of the body did. Her mind reddened until only blood remained, and she prepared to give up any reasoning as she prepared herself to go on a mad rampage. As any being, whenever they were the strongest of gods or even the very outer gods, would have to pay a deep price before killing her, as she would never go down easy, for she was a dragon king, the strongest among dragons. But at the next second, that distorted moment that spans centuries disappears as if reality itself returns to life as Tiamat's eyes snap open, and she uses her ability. Cause and effect, and an ancient, deeply distorted voice sounds from her mouth as the reality corrects itself to its rightful place. Which is the unknown angel, for some reason, attacking himself without any reason. The Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon, did not miss the attack that she threw towards the angel, as the angel hadn't managed to dodge her attack by dematerializing his own body in time. Boom! This time, with an attack that surpassed even the initial attack, Moon was sent flying towards a distant mountain. This time, he broke through boulders and ancient trees like a needle that flew at light speed as he cleared a straight path through them. But Tiamat wasn't done yet, as Tiamat's body, unknown even to her, as if making up for giving up earlier than her mind, charged up an immensely powerful fire breath and shot it towards the angels. Hitting it just a second after it landed on the mountain. Hitting the angel right in the eye while creating a mushroom cloud that reached into the very limits of the sky. Which bloomed a second after as it covered the sky fully. What was that? Tiamat mutters with consorted eyes as she takes in a sharp breath of air, her scales dimming and her body twitching and contorting as she suppresses herself from shaking in terror or falling over to the ground. She took a slow step forward, but her legs gave out when she put weight behind it, causing her to kneel down despite how humiliating this was. She desperately tried to stand up again, but no matter what, no strength traveled towards her leg, and no amount of the dragon power that she radiated in desperation made her forget that fleeting horror. A horror that left her just as fast as it came. A mirage, madness she would like to call it, but she knew deep in her heart. That thing was just as real as her and everything that existed in this world and was somehow connected to that angel. Time fractured around her as she knelt, a being equal to the very outer gods who could deny the existence of the world just by merely existing. It was real, wasn't it? The horror that had gripped her chest. Or was it? A fleeting moment, a fragment of an impossible thought, had it happened at all, or was she already lost to the twisting of reality? Nothing felt certain. Nothing felt right. The burning smell of her flesh and the pain that accompanied it stole her attention away from her fractured mind as she looked down towards her chest and her claw, which burned, despite her already using her ability, changing the cause and effect so that the angel's attack never hit her, yet it remains. Her consorting pupils slowly stopped changing sizes as she tried to put out the flame, dousing it with thick dragon power. But it didn't work. Instead, it only made the flame stronger and caused the flame to change hue to platinum yellow. Then she tried a few spells like Frost Rain and Winter's Wrath. A rare few spells she learned in her long life. Which also didn't work. So she tried cutting out that part of her body along with the dragon power that, for some reason, started resisting her will. Not moving as she wished and harming her body despite being one of her own. It worked, as all the dragon power, along with some scales, was thrown out beside her. Then she started looking around for that angel. Though she didn't know what she should do with it, as normally she would crush those who trespassed into her territory without a single thought. But for that thing, she wasn't sure. That angel felt like it was as strong as the very outer gods and weak as the ultimate class. At least to her, ultimate class was considered weak, as she killed plenty of ultimate class beings. Unknown to her, that angel whom she was worrying about was quite a few kilometers away, crawling towards the Mink clan's castle. Moon could be seen crawling towards the Mink clan's castle using his wings as spider's legs, as every feather that was once on his wings was burned to a crisp, leaving behind only the burned flesh. Yuk, though calling it crawling could be the wrong word, as he was moving with a speed surpassing even leopard speed towards the city. And in just a few seconds, he was inside the city, rapidly going towards the Mink clan castle. Midway to the core part of the city, he saw Kale and Katu, along with their bodyguard, running towards him. But his eyes were blurry as his eyes, which he thought to be as tough as adamantium, were cracked in several places, and one part was even open. Golden liquid was dripping down from his eyes. And to add salt to a wound, for some reason, just when he and Tiamat, the Dragon King, were having a stare down, everything for some reason darkened. He woke up on a distant mountain, injured quite badly, along with a considerable amount of souls, about half of the souls that he managed to collect gone with no sign of where or what exactly happened. Frustrating him to no end, the temporary boost that he was getting disappeared, and the only silver lining that was preventing him from vowing a blood vow towards Tiamat was the fact that the souls he now had were enough for him to ascend to the ultimate class without a problem. When he got close enough to them, he heard Kale stop in front of him. Her eyes were wide, and her mouth was hanging open in deep shock. "What happened to you?" A question that he didn't answer, as he was in a rush, putting it lightly. "Artifact now," he demanded in his eldritch voice, as for some reason, he wasn't capable of normal speech currently. Kale's leg falters as if in shock, and she takes a step, but Katu, who stood behind her mother, hugs her mother and whispers. "Mother," questions later. The hug from her daughter seemed to bring down her shock as she took out the artifact and activated it. Soon, a blue circle appeared around them as it teleported them to the human world. But just before they teleported away, Moon turned right where he saw Tiamat flying up straight towards the sky. Probably haven't seen them yet. Just a second before they left, Moon, using his eldritch, cursed voice, spoke. "Tiamat of the Dragon King, I shall remember this slight," Moon said as he disappeared from the underworld. His voice, eldritch and cursed, reached Tiamat only a second after he disappeared due to how slow sound traveled. Chapter 27. The night was snowy and windy, as one would expect when it was still February, as it was one of the coldest months in Japan. But still, for Kawa City, it didn't diminish them. Instead, it only added a layer of pristine white coat over the city, making the city even more beautiful than without it. The neon lights of the city made the city glisten like a jewel of various colors as street vendors sold takoyaki, yakisoba, or even yakitori. And the people who were touring or spending time around the city sometimes bought a few of them with peaceful smiles adorned on their faces. The giggles of young girls accompanied by their boyfriends, the haughty laughter of children as they ran around doing what they wished, and the middle-aged couples who were traveling around the city in reminiscence of their younger days. All in all, the city was one of happiness and laughter, but still, just like there would always be a shadow when there is light. A few places, like abandoned buildings or abandoned churches, were empty and without people. But the abandoned church wouldn't be empty for long, as a group of people with 4 fallen angels with 1 pair of wings that was as dark as the night sky came about. Mind explaining to me what we are doing here? A small girl with blonde hair, which was styled into twin tails, and blue eyes spoke with annoyance. She wore Gothic Lolita attire, which consisted of a black dress with white frills, a large black bow on the front, and a green jewel embedded on the collar, white thigh-high socks with suspender garters, a black set of frilly panties, and black shoes. She also wore a large black bow on top of her hair. She was a fallen angel named Mittelt. And a fallen angel who stood at the front replied. Orders from above, check for sacred gear users or anyone talented. Recruit if possible. If not, just watch. Huffed another beautiful fallen angel who was more beautiful than any supermodel. She was an attractive young woman with violet eyes and a curvaceous, slender body. She had long, silky black hair that reached down to her hips and possessed 2 black feathered wings characteristic of her race, and on her face was an annoyance even more apparent. Why? Millet wailed like she was ordered to build a house using only a toothpick. Her fist tightened, and her mouth widened as she screamed. And her scream seemed to annoy Rainer even more as she shot Millet a vicious gaze. A gaze that sent a message that if she were to do anything that annoyed her more than it already had, she would pay. Millet understood her gaze, so she stopped and turned right to look elsewhere while huffing. An act she did because she was trying not to look scared off without looking like she was. After this, they flew to an abandoned church and ordered a few of their subordinates to set up the base, the most minimal one, but still a base. All while they barked orders without care. After some time, they finally finished setting up the base and started relaxing. A fallen angel named Kala Warner started by taking a long, warm bath while Donasik was having fun with a human girl that he grabbed along the way. He took his time as he savored her fully from top to bottom, as he hadn't had any chance to release some pent-up frustration recently. Millet also wanted to enjoy herself like him, but because her toy was already broken, she had to go to the city to get a new one. Rainer also accompanied her to the city, not to find a toy or something, just to comb through the city and get an initial investigation in order. Also, along the way, she could enjoy herself by ruining the lives of unfortunate people, especially those who were enjoying themselves. As ripping the smile off a happy couple brings her the most satisfaction, no, bringing pain upon rude bitches brings even more satisfaction. Rainer thought as her mind wandered towards the past, where once, while traveling around Europa, a rude village girl called her breast sagging. A vicious and cold smile slowly creeps upon her face, and the edges of her eyes squint in happiness. She got what she deserved. Rainer thought as she remembered how she sold her to a most run-down brothel as a lowest-rung slave prostitute. She even went through the trouble of killing all her family members just in case they went and brought her back. The bright eyes of hers that slowly dimmed over time as she was rammed through by tens of men every day and how her body slowly gave up brought her a pleasure like no other. A pleasure that not even the greatest of sex or even the strongest of drugs could ever hope to emulate. As a consequence, it made her forget about things such as the pleasures of the flesh or the powder keg that was called drugs, but she didn't miss them much as she had enjoyed the pleasure of flesh and drugs more times than she could count through the millennia that she lived. I should just get a brief scan in order tomorrow and leave. Rainer thought as she decided to leave this city after only half-heartedly combing through it once. After all, what are the chances that anybody would check up on this city after she left? Not only that, but for there to be a sacred gear right in this city in Japan? No way in hell. Even if there were, they were probably recruited by the overseer of this territory with their fancy peerage pieces. Though unknown to her, in another possible future, because she was previously here and had investigated, she would later be sent to Kwa again. Due to several coincidences and her ambition, she would lure Asia Argento, an excommunicated nun, to this city to steal her sacred gear. Although in that possible future, she would be severely stumped and confused for over a week on how naive and sheltered the girl was. Heck, the girl, Asia Argento, even had to rely on them for food because she wasn't capable of finding food on her own. And would possibly starve to death if left alone. But unfortunately or fortunately for her, she would be beaten by a perverted sacred gear user and, as a consequence, die due to it. But that possible future stopped being a possibility due to a certain angel who was coming from the underworld. Yuwa. Kala Walker exhaled as she relaxed back into the bathtub. Her tense body relaxed, and the muscle on her face softened as she leaned back. Her chest floated on the surface of the water. As the water relieved her back of the constant pressure, she closed her eyes and enjoyed herself. What should I have for dinner? She whispered as she thought of food that she currently wanted. Pizza? She asked herself. No, not feeling like it. She answered. How about some burgers? She asked herself again. Yeah, that's a good idea. She said as she nodded to herself, still with her eyes closed, but now with a small smile on her face. Wakala Walker was washing her and taking a long hot bath. A giant round white object suddenly appears on top of the church and starts to fall on top of the abandoned church. The moment she heard the swooshing of the wind and crunching of the church's roof, her muscle memory kicked in as she instantly got up and dashed. Her figure was a blur as she ran through the halls of the abandoned church naked, her chest bouncing up and down like watermelons and her lower body, specifically the cheeks, clapping due to still being wet as she barely in time jumped out of the church. She did a barrel roll a few times before stopping, after which she put on her clothes using magic and looked behind her to look at what had fallen on top of their base. Though she had half a mind to just leave, as she was quite sure that the thing that attacked them was devils, considering that they technically trespassed into their territory. But contrary to her expectation, what she saw was only a giant white ball, which for some odd reason had 4 long, pillar-like tendrils. An intense burning smell permeated her a second later, causing her to scrunch her nose. What the hell? She muttered, only to stop as she noticed that the giant ball was, in fact, a giant, massive, humongous eye. But because the eye was facing downwards and the smoke was blocking her view, she initially didn't manage to capture the view. But after the smoke fell a bit, she noticed it. Only for her to freeze a second later as she realized that the huge eye, almost 4 meters in diameter, was, in fact, an angel. To top it off, it was an angel that was on a cadre tier. How could a giant eyeball be an angel? She asked herself as she gawked at the huge eye with her mouth wide. Ever since time immemorial, even in the olden days, all the angels that were created by that one were all beautiful or handsome, even by the supernatural world standards. With their perfectly systematic body and faces, along with their gentle and soft expression, they were viewed as one of the beacons of beauty. With only some gods or goddesses being above them, even then, some angels like the great Archangel Gabriel were even above those goddesses in terms of look. But here lay an abomination-like angel on the ruins of their makeshift base. With a warped and blended body that screamed that it was a monster, along with 4 impossibly long burned tendril that for some reason had face of monsters. Yep. Without a doubt, a monster. She silently thought to herself. Still, the pure holy energy and the small white feathers that were there at the base of the tendril told her all she needed to know. That she needed to flee and to not to look back. So she did just that. She turned around and spread her wings wide and prepared to fly. Why-ish was all she heard before she felt one of the tendrils penetrate through her chest, coming out of the other side. Her eyes contrasted, and her face took on the shade of white as she turned around to plead. Only one of the other tendrils found its way and penetrated her leg, severing it into 2 pieces due to how thick it was. No. Wait, She screams, only for her scream to be drowned out by the other tendrils also penetrating her. And the tendrils, which were in fact wings, pulled out of the wound that was there and tore through her again until all that was left was just a meat pile and some blood. Which also disappeared the next second due to the angel using his ability and burning up everything. Disgusting wench. Moon cursed unconsciously due to how much disgust he felt and the thickest killing intent that appeared in his hazy mind. Even though he wasn't sure what he killed except the feminine voice that he heard, but the absolute disgust he felt was all he needed to determine what he would have to do. Which is to obliterate everything that has any connection to it to smithereens. An act that he was about to do again as he felt another stench below him under the collapsed church, crawling upwards towards him. Along with several others who were also there. Soon, a scream or pleading of a few beings rang out before dying out the next second along with flames of the moon destroying everything. After neatly burning everything, he turned towards Gale and Katu, who just saw all of this happen with a somewhat calm expression. Heck, even the guards had calm and neutral expressions. He extended one of his wings, which, embarrassingly enough, looked more like a burned octopus tentacle rather than wings, and healed all of them, along with wiping away their exhaustion. Gale and Katu, along with their bodyguards, just stood still as it happened, for they knew that he would not have any ulterior motive. Thank you. Gale said as she nodded politely towards him with the healthy color of her body returned to what it should, which is soft green. Thank you, Sir Moon. Katu chirped with a smile, but there was a hint of exhaustion visible in the depth of her eyes despite her already recovering physically, a thing that he deeply understood as today has been a very hectic day. She probably fought and killed off more than she could count today. Though now that he thought about it, he should also be quite tired, considering that he first fought Thunder Rabbit, then he massacred the whole city, after which he had a brief showdown with Tiamat. Moon, though, only noticed that his vision was blurring as he continued to think. But he forced himself to stay awake as he didn't know if he was in a safe place or if Tiamat wouldn't follow them along, as he was quite sure that a dragon of Tiamat's rank might be capable of teleportation between realms. "Let's go," Moon said as he prepared himself to travel east. "Why east?" someone might ask. "Because in the west there was a city. And he doesn't want to enter or be anywhere near any city, as that is where most of the supernatural beings are located. And he doesn't know if his self-control would prevail against his instinct of massacring everything that was sinful, just like the things that he just killed. As he was pretty that there was more from just the ones that he killed in the city." All 4 of his wings stabbed the ground, shakingly, as his wings, obeying Moon's orders, prepared to go along for another march. He took a step, shakingly and slow, but Moon radiated a holy energy from himself and enhanced his wings, causing them to stop shaking as he took another step, only to suddenly fall even though he enhanced his wings. "Why are my wings not moving?" Moon wondered with some absent-mindedness as he prepared himself to try again, only to fail again after taking another 2 steps. This time, even the shaking stopped as he stopped having any feeling in his wings. "Move," he thought as he tried again, but his wings didn't move, for it was too injured and too exhausted to do anything. And his already hazy and dim mind started to darken as he felt his strength leaving him. Despite his monstrous if not abnormal endurance and vigor, his body was still, in the end, things made of muscle and bones, though not exactly pure bones and muscle, but still some part of his body was still, in the end, mortalish. Just like how there is a limit to even the most limitless thing, his body has reached its limit. For it had endured the onslaught of Thunder Rabbit, who at the moment of his death displayed strength in the ultimate class, and the thousands of attacks of the city, along with the stress of being forced to digest thousands of souls. But still, this amount of attack wouldn't be nearly enough for Moon's body to fall, but the attacks of Tiamat and the fire breath that she sent him were the last straw. His body gave up completely and fell. But due to a miracle that was the thousands of souls that were stuffed inside Moon, by using sheer will, and to the fact that the souls inside him were still fresh and hadn't completely forgotten their life story and their fear of the monster that was Moon, he was capable of controlling them and, in the process, controlling his body temporarily, which he used to crawl to the city and escape the underworld. And the eldritch voice that Moon was talking about was the souls inside him repeating what he said, all at the same time. But even a miracle has an end. As the souls inside him slowly gave out, so did his consciousness that was just floating on top of the sea that was his consciousness. Moon turned to Kale and instructed her. "Protect me and find a safe place until I wake up." Kale nodded at him with a solemn face, a face that he desperately needed as he was, putting it lightly, in severe panic and exhaustion. Slowly, the world around him dimmed as his vision blacked out until all he saw was darkness. Kale stood beside Moon's body quietly, her body tense and her eyes furrowed, but there was a hint of unease that Moon couldn't capture due to his blinking consciousness. An unease that was caused by the fact that she doesn't even know where they are, just that they are going to a place called Vatican, Rome, where they would then go to heaven. Nevertheless, no matter how uncertain she felt, she would always have to show a confident front and move forward. For she was the sole pillar of this team with Moon unconscious. "Ariel, fly to the sky and survey the surroundings, put extra focus on the west." Kale said this as she used all the scraps of intelligence she had. Which is not much, as she only knew that Moon was trying to go west and that he killed several beings just after being brought here. Through the brief glance that she had, she determined that they were probably fallen angels. Ariel, the harpy, nodded as she flew to the sky to survey the surroundings, only for a blazing red ball of destruction to run right in front of her, halting her in the process. Kale turned to where the attack came from, and she saw several humans, no, several devils, judging by the wild and heavy demonic energy she was feeling, coming towards them. 2 of them have more energy than her, though she wouldn't say they were stronger due to how some of them had nervous expressions, though not much, just stiff expressions and somewhat rigid head movement. But the main reason is how sluggish they are in manipulating their energy, quite rough around the edges as they prepared their spells. "Halt!" she heard the one on the head, a red-haired girl, yell as she flew closer. Chapter 28. Kale and the rest of the group turned to the group with the red-haired girl at its head. All of them, even Katu, had a serious expression as they warily stood their ground. Their hands rested just above their weapons as they watched each movement. Kale slowly took on a crouching stance, which was an equivalent of a combat stance to her, as she stared at the red-haired devil girl and several others who stood behind her. A white-haired little girl, a blonde boy, and a dark-haired girl. While both groups were observing each other, Kale noticed that the red-haired girl's eyes shifted towards Moon's unconscious body, which was still releasing an intense burning smell, specifically from its wings, though other part was also burned to a certain degree. Kale slowly started walking left, step by step, her legs slow, yet without stopping. Her eyes never left the devils as she waited for them to make a sudden move. But in the end, they didn't, as Kale now stood between Moon and the red-haired girl. The frown on the girl's face deepens as she turns to look at her eye. The devil girl opened her mouth. "State your purpose and the reason you're here." Her voice was calm yet had a faint shadow of authority. Yet, Kale didn't answer, nor did she move. She just stood quietly, though on the inside, quite a bit of a thought was getting processed. A noble? Quite possible, observing from how she acts and the small habits that she unconsciously does. Her eyes shifted just a bit to the left, to the black-haired girl who stood slightly behind her. Such as walking in front of others without care, even though that black-haired girl almost had the same amount of energy as her, granted 20 or 30% lower, but still for her to do it so casually and how she carry herself. But for now, it's not important. What's important now is, should I fight or flee? Although I am pretty sure we can defeat them, I don't know if there is any backup, but fleeing with Sir Moon isn't possible. With how big he is, and the artifact isn't charged yet. Wait a second. Kale thought with a bit of a confused expression. Why fight or run in the first place? Why not just try to solve it politically? She thought to herself while silently blaming the battles that she had just taken part in and the unconscious thought process engraved into her that angels and devils are beings of polar opposites, as it caused her to instantly assume that the devil in front of her was an enemy. However, she still would have the same view if Sir Moon did not clarify that the three factions would not kill each other in sight. "Pardon yous, miss?" Kale asked as she stood up and politely bowed while inquiring how she should address her. "Greenery, Ryaz Greenery." The girl said. "Excuse me, Ms. Greenery. But due to an accident involving an artifact, we were forcefully teleported here. We don't mean any harm, as we would immediately leave," Kale politely said, with her eyebrow dropping down and the edges of her mouth curved upwards in the form of a polite smile. While showing both of her palms towards her, a goblin equivalent of a polite surrender, but in this case, the meaning was, "We mean no harm." Raya said, with a questioning tone in the end, feeling stumped and a bit stunned on what she should do now. Just a few minutes ago, she was relaxing and playing chess with her queen, Ecchi no Hijimara, when suddenly an immense amount of holy energy of an angel appeared on the edge of the city. Specifically in the direction in which the abandoned church was located. At least that was what she thought through her senses, though she was pretty confident in her assessment, as devils were naturally more sensitive towards the holy energy of angels. When she first sensed it, her first thought was to escape, as that holy energy not only was immense but also had some sort of dreading feeling to it that somehow made it hard for her to breathe. But she shook it off and started gathering her courage to fight or escape if necessary. But just as she finished gathering her courage, which actually took about a minute or two, she noticed that the holy energy was, for some reason, moving frantically 1 second and freezing a second later. A sign that the owner of the holy energy was exhausted and was trying to gather what remained of holy energy to keep going. A thing that gave her some courage, as she immediately sent Konko, a Nekozu, a rare species of Nekomata, to check up on it from a distance while they viewed it from a bit further. When they got there, they saw a huge eye trying to stand up from a distance. Its leg shaking as it took a step, only to fall. After which, it tried again and failed also. And just a few seconds later, the eye fell to the ground with a massive thud, a thud that even she heard from this distance. So she stopped Konko from checking up on it as it was already safe and flew to the angel. The other creatures that were around the angel weren't so strong, judging by their magical signature. She threw a warning ball of destruction towards the harpy, who was in the sky, stopping it in her tracks. After which, she flew closer to them and was about to capture them. If they resisted, they would beat them up and then capture them. Only for an unexpectedly polite conversation to take place. One that she didn't even think would happen in the dozens of scenarios that she envisioned. But still a pleasant surprise as she had learned that they weren't there to attack them or take them hostage. Instead, it was only an unfortunate accident. After that, Kale and Ryaz talked a bit, Ryaz asking quite a few questions to verify if what she said was true, which the goblin, Ryaz learned its name was Kale, answered without a pause or getting stuck, at least most of them, as Kale said she didn't know some things because she was just a servant. A thing that she understood, and the faint instinct of her telling her that she wasn't lying and wasn't plotting anything helped Ryaz relax her guard. "What kind of artifact teleported all of you?" Ryaz asked, her voice no longer having the edge that she had while she was interrogating them in the name of polite questioning. But as the conversation continued on and with Konko giving her a green light through her heightened instincts, it really took on the form of a polite questioning. "Oh, this right here did it," Kale said with a smile on her face as she took out a totem that shone in pale light. One that had an extremely detailed craftsmanship and magical signature carving befitting of its status as an artifact that could teleport one across the globe. Ryaz nodded as she inspected the totem. "It does look like one," she muttered. Kale nodded at her words before saying, "Miss Greenery, can we leave?" My lord's condition isn't currently good, and we need to tend to him urgently. Yes, you can go. Do be careful next time. Raya said as she started bidding farewell to the goblin named Kale and their group, who turned around and started walking towards the angel to lift it up and carry him. They slowly spread out, encircling the angel, after which they counted. 3, 2, 1 now. The biggest beastman who looked like a tiger yelled as they started trying to lift it. Trying was the best word, as they barely even moved him, despite Kale and another beastman already casting levitation spells. But for some reason, when the spell reached Moon, it severely weakened, and the angel was unexpectedly heavier than it looked. She guessed that the angel would be around 30 or 40 tons since it was about 4 meters in diameter and had 4 giant tendrils. But judging by the dent its tendril made and the hole that was created by its body, it looked like it was about 60 or so tons. Again. The beastman again yelled as he tried even harder. His muscles bulged like they were about to burst, and his pulses started coiling like snakes, but still in the end it was useless. They barely even lifted him 10 or so centimeters before falling to the ground. Do you need help? Ryaz inquired, feeling like if she didn't help, they probably wouldn't even move the angel a meter before the sun rose. And she doesn't want to set up an illusion on the ruins of this church to prevent humans from seeing it. The one who answered her question was a goblin girl who was gasping air like it was a precious commodity, possibly daughter of the goblin. Yes, please. After which, she turned around to look at her peerage to see their reaction. Which, much like her, didn't mind. So they spread out and prepared to lift the angel, each of them spreading into 5 as they walked, with Ryaz taking the corner that was closest to her. With the goal of moving the angel at least 100 meters down the hill, away from plain view. But when Ryaz touched the angel, she quickly retracted her hand as she felt a burning sensation. Ouch! She said as she looked at her hand. She felt as if a burning hot needle penetrated her hand. She looked around and noticed that Takano was also, much like her, rubbing her hand. But the rest, Konko and Yao too, were grabbing it. Didn't your hand get prickled? She asked Yodo and Konko while raising one of her eyebrow. Yodo shook his head in denial. While I do feel like I am grabbing a hot stone, I didn't get prickled. Konko, on the other hand, shook her head. Hot, but no prickles. She nodded at them, thinking that it was some sort of angel thing that she didn't know about. Like devils touching an angel, specifically the one of high rank would get one burned. So she materialized a few thick winter gloves, distributed them, and tried again. This time, they managed to lift it 30 centimeters and moved him about 10 centimeters. But no matter what kind of spell she tried to cast, it would be severely weakened to the point that it would only display a shadow of what it should. For the next 10 minutes, they slowly transferred him, extremely slowly, to the point that she even suggested cutting down a few trees and using them to roll him more easily. A notion that was abandoned because when they tried it, the trunk of the tree instantly snapped as the angel was round and most of its center of mass was on a single point mass. Just as it seemed like they would spend the night transporting him, with an audible thud, a group of people came. Ahem. Sonasteri, heiress of the Saitri clan and a bespectacled young woman with a slim figure, black hair styled in a short bob cut, and violet eyes, stood quietly behind them. With her peerage behind her back, along with an addition of 2 fallen angels, specifically Rainer and Milam knocked unconscious, and slung over 2 of her peerage members' shoulder. What are you doing, Ryaz? She asked while fixing her glasses with her finger, with the smallest hint of confusion visible in her voice. She could get the general situation through brief glance. Ryaz and her peerage, along with several others, were lifting what seemed to be a giant eyeblesh angel. She wasn't sure why and how there could be an angel like this. And why are they even doing it in the first place, she didn't know, and that confused her. Oh, Sona, I was just trying to transport this angel to a place away from the human eye. Ryaz said while bolting upwards and fixing her clothes a bit. Sona put her hand on her nose as she massaged them, feeling like her friend was getting stupider every day. Did you try teleporting him? Ryaz said, not knowing what to say. All right, I understand. Sona said as she walked closer to the angel and started setting up the teleportation circle. While the transported object is immensely huge, because the distance is quite close, she thought it wouldn't take too much energy. Slowly, the teleportation formation fully envelops the area around the angel as it slowly completes. Why-ish the glow of the circle cast light upon all of them, and then the angel moved only 4 meters to the left, instead of 100 or so meters as Sona had intended. What? She quietly whispered to herself as she looked at the angel and the distance it had gone. Ryaz turned to her after looking at the angel. Sona, 4 meters wouldn't be enough. Sona just glared at Ryaz with narrowed eyes for a second before replying. I know. After this, she walked past the angel and started conjuring water and clearing the path for the angel to roll. Her hand moved swiftly, and her magic cleared it in seconds as a simple path was created. After which she manipulated her water and turned it into slippery ice to reduce friction. A simple application that she learned from her sister, although she rarely used it. After that, she motioned towards them, signaling to them to do it. A motion that they all nodded as some of Suna's peerage members helped them and pushed the angel down the hill, though midway through, they almost lost control. Almost as at the last second they managed to reduce its speed enough to regain control. If they, at that time, lost control, they might have just caused the angel to roll down the hill like a bowling ball and strike down trees like pins. A sight that would cast a bit of a smile on some of the people present, also a snicker or two. After they transported it enough, Ryaz conjured up a simple illusion barrier to make people ignore the angel. That should do it, Ryaz said as she gazed at her handiwork. One that she was quite proud of, as it was one of her best illusion domes yet. And if they hadn't moved the angel, a simple illusion such as this would never be enough, as the illusion have to work on much more people and many more times. She took a deep breath of fresh air, one filled with a bit of winter forest, and turned to Kale, the goblin woman. Would you care to join me for tea? I think it would be nice to talk properly. Kale gently shook her head. While I appreciate the gesture, I would not leave Sir Moon alone. Ryaz nodded at her gesture, respecting her loyalty and her will as she felt she were similar to her peerage. With all of them loyal and thoughtful to each other. After that they turned around, flew to their home. To report what happened to the mouse, in other words, Sona's sister and Ryaz's brother. Explaining everything that happened and asking what they should do. Unknown to them, Kale the goblin woman was feeling quite bit embarrassed and anxious at the situation. While they managed to solve the devils without resorting to violence, they couldn't leave because they couldn't lift nor transport Moon due to how his body weakens any spells cast on him and how heavy he is. Will he get angry when he woke up? Kale muttered as she looked at the backs of the devils leaving them, though not all of them, as she sensed one or two didn't leave and was watching them. Underworld Lilith, capital city of the underworld, within the palace of the Devil King, where Mouse reside and do their work. In one of the biggest room where ornament and artifact of immense value were displayed like common decoration, along with a window that was almost 4 meters in height alone illuminating the room with its light, a medieval wooden massive desk was placed on the back of the room. On that desk was paperwork that stacked until it was as tall as a child, probably a meter or meter 20 in height. Behind that desk was an extremely handsome man who looked to be in his 20s with crimson red hair that almost seemed to burn like an endless fire and deep blue eyes that contrasted with his hair, making each of them even more apparent and beautiful than without each other. Permission for building an. The man, known as Sir Lucifer, read quietly as he judged if a private hotel would be built in the east district of the city. One where middle upper or upper lower civilians lived. His eyes, in just a brief few seconds, read through all of them, and he signed his name on the edge of the paper, giving permission. Ring 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 from beside him, on the desk right where his work phone was located, his private phone rings. He extended his hand and grabbed and saw Ryaz, his sister's name on it. Upon seeing the name, his expression instantly softens and his eyes instantly lost the sharp edge it always had as he instantly picks it up. Ryaz, did something happen? Did you need something? He said, his voice crisp and pleasant to hear, also deep in its own way. From the other side, he heard his sister mutter something quietly in her mouth. About how she should explain the situation. A thing that instantly piqued his interest, as after all, there were a few things that his dear sister would hesitate tell him, if he remembered correctly. The last time something similar to this happened was quite a long time ago when she requested that she wanted to go the human world as a territory overseer. A thing that he solved with a phone and a few words. After a second or two, Ryaz, his dear sister, seemed to finally got ready. Big brother, an angel on ultimate class crash landed on my territory due to an accident. Sir Lucifer's finger unconsciously tightened around the phone when he heard the ultimate class angel, but relaxed after hearing that it was on accident. It meant that at least his sister was currently safe and sound. I understand, Ryaz-tan, I will take care of it, you don't have to worry. Though who was he? Was it Remy Eel? Or Serial? If you don't know, describe it for me. Okay? Ryaz's voice sounded a bit unsure as she continued. Well, first it was 4 meters in diameter and 4 burn tentacles instead of wings. 4 meters? Tentacle? Sir Lucifer's, who was listening on, asked dubiously. His expression got warped as he listened. The paper that he was holding in his other hand, falling to the ground. Also, its body is a massive eye, and it probably weighs around 60 or so tons. 60 tons? Eye? Sir Lucifer continued asking, not knowing if he was hearing it wrong or his sister was drunk or charmed through magic. Though possibilities of her being charmed was of much higher possibilities. And Ryaz, not knowing that her words had confused her brother to no end, continued mercilessly pounding out things that Sirst Lucifer had never even dreamed of in his dreams, and it is laying on the edge of the city unconscious due to the injuries it received, along with its subordinate, 2 goblin, 1 harpy, 3 beast men. She continued, but Sirst Lucifer's heard nothing from it as he was preparing to go to the human world himself to see the legendary angel that his sister was talking about and to also take his sister back to the underworld with him. As the though of an angel, no less in ultimate class inside Ryaz's overseeing territory, raised his alarm bell to ring quite a few times. After all, just like there are warhawks who want to start the war in the devil's population, there were also angels in heaven who wanted to do the same. Only for an ice crystal, with his fellow Ma'os, specifically Seraphal Levition's magic signature appeared in front of him. And from it, a message instantly played out. Lushitan, don't worry. I am already on my way, I will take care of it. The crystal started growing brighter in 7 different colors, and a faint shadow of a girl wearing a magical girl outfit appeared. For I, magical girl Sarachan is coming to the rescue to beat the bad angel who scared my Sotan. Sirst Lucifer stops in his tracks and sits back into his chair. His tense body relaxing as he returned to the paperwork. Trusting that she will be capable of protecting them. Chapter 29. Moon was dreaming. A dream that foretold of a scene that he could barely capture within his fragile mind. A scene that could crumble any mortal's mind until nothing but a single word remains in one's head. Holy was the word that would remain despite everything that the mortal had cherished throughout their lives. Whenever they had a son or daughter, whenever they had a wife or husband. It did not matter. All that would remain would be the word holy. Moon dreamed of a scene where he was circling a golden figure. A figure that no matter how many times he tried, he couldn't capture its exact shape or anything related to it. But he, for some reason, knew that figure was the Almighty. The only one in the endless cosmos that any being, or even concepts like life and death, would call the Divine One. For the Divine One was the creator and the ruler of all. For the Divine One was all of the creation itself. And he was circling that divine figure, shouting the word holy 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 in absolute passion and adoration. No, passion was not the correct word, it would be more accurate to say it was in endless, ceaseless decree. A decree that he cried out for millions of years and would cry out for billions more. Somehow, despite living for millions of years, he felt like he was changing every second, every millisecond, when he was in the presence of the Almighty. And he felt every single bit of it, clear as day, but he did not resist, nor did he despair. For there was not a single shred of him that would resist or escape if the Almighty ever were to decide to kill him. Soon, he became a being who did not love nor mourn. For he was not like men. He does not tremble at ruin nor weep for the perishing. When fire consumes cities, he does not turn away. When the sword falls upon nations, he does not falter. His endless cries of holy, holy, holy continued. His many eyes see, but do not weep. His many wings move but do not tire. He lived as a wheel within wheels, as burning forms veiled in light terrible, beautiful, and beyond knowing. He executes the will of the Most High. He laid waste to world upon world, universe after universe, without stopping nor slowing down. For he was the messenger of the Almighty, the one who would be eternally in the presence of the Most High. In the endless years that seemed to span almost infinitely, one day, he heard the Divine One mutter. No, my child, you have another destiny. Moon turned his endless and eldritch gaze to the Great One who was looking at him. The Great One continued with the very suns burning in his gaze. For I had fallen Moon's gaze that devoured worlds and could send the very universes into flames, shudders and start sweeping. Tears that were as golden as the very suns dripped down his innumerable gaze. Moon saw the Divine One's body, a body that was as vast and incomprehensible as the very existence itself, rapidly tremble and shudder. His perfect form that no other beings in the endless cosmos could even begin to comprehend shook and shuddered as parts of his body cracked and fell off. He, on the other hand, slowly felt his soul, the one which became as golden as his fiery burning body, change. The golden color of his soul peels off and reveals the faces of many beings that he killed and devoured. Rapim the Thunder Rabbit, the Goblin Clan Chief, Scar the Orc Warrior, miners that lived inside the mountain, all of them. Their faces were twisted and were slowly morphing into madness just like they did in the body that he had on the outside. Their cries and grievances were enough to drive most gods into a deep abyss called utter madness. Yet he reveled in it, for every soul that cried out in anguish and pain on his soul and body, he felt a bliss like no other. A bliss that he could never hope to achieve using mundane things like pleasures of flesh, drugs, or love. For it was the joy itself to become one and whole again. The last words he heard from the Divine One were, "Would the one who arose from my remains be the same as me?" His endless divine voice, echoing through galaxies and universes, for some reason came out as weak and fragile in his ears, no matter how much blasphemy it was. Outside world, Gale, who was sitting beside Moon on the outside, noticed that some sort of light was coming out of Moon's body, one that was completely unlike holy energy. Golden, yet blazing white. At first, it was slow and little, but soon it picked up speed and formed a cocoon around him. A golden cocoon that was as big as 5 meters in diameter and had some sort of strange symbols on it that Gale had no idea about. But still, upon seeing it, she relaxed and released the breath that she had unknowingly harbored in her chest as it revealed to her that Sir Moon was alive and well and that he wouldn't die. Pop! But suddenly an orb of light suddenly popped out of the cocoon, specifically from the side facing her. The orb was golden red in color and was gently falling to the ground. Katu, who stood beside her, asked dubiously. Did Sir Moon just give birth? Both of her eyebrows looked like they might touch her hairline any minute, and her face was pale as if she had just witnessed some horrifying truth. And Gale, as her mother, knew what was on her mind even clearer than what she, herself, thought. No, Sir Moon is not a woman nor a man, Cat a creator? Gale suddenly heard a sound of an little body. Still crisp and innocent sound straight from the golden orb that was floating down. Katu, her daughter without missing a bit, mutters, he truly is a woman, mother. Suddenly the orb flew to the golden cocoon, and started embracing it. His coconut-sized body squashing against the golden surface as he started rubbing himself on him while muttering. Creator, I shall protect you. Seraphal Levation was putting it lightly, annoyed and angry. At what? One might ask to the big bad angel who scared her little sister, Sotan, till she cried and trembled, therefore forcing her to cry out to her big sister in desperation. Her cheek puffed up like a hamster at the thought, and her hand tightened into a fist. Angel Kun, be prepared for a whacking of the century, for the magical girl Sarah-chan would not let you go, scot-free, she said as she punched through the air while imagining the Angel Kun begging for mercy and crying out. I will get you, magical girl Sarah-chan, next time. While he was fleeing like a coward who only knows how to bully little girls. While she was imagining it, she soon noticed that she had already came to her sister's school, in other words, where her sister was located currently. So she, just like how a proper sister should act, climbed through the windows of the room her sister was located. Jumped, no, hugged her sister from behind. What? Sister? Sona, her sister, let out a startled cry as she turned to her. Her shocked expression slowly turned into an annoyed one as she tried to get her off of her. But as a proper sister, how could she allow it? Instead, she just hugged her tighter and started fake crying. I thought you were almost dead. What? From her eyes, tears were falling like a crystallization of her anxiousness and sadness. Though it looked quite fake, still, her precious little sister wouldn't shrug her off when she was crying like this, as she was her attentive and loving sister. And just as she expected, Sona did not shrug her off. Instead, her expression changed from annoyed to concerned and finally to a bit of annoyed acceptance as she wrapped her hands around her. There. She heard her sister mutter like a mother caring for one's kin. And as a proper sister, she wouldn't let this chance go as she started smelling her like a windblower but in reverse. After a minute or two of it, she reluctantly stops, as too much would make it impossible to get it next time, though she silently decided to lower the beating that she would give to the angel. Now, instead of giving whacking of the century, she will give whacking of the decade, a full 10 times lowered. After that, she got to business. She flew to where the angel was located but only saw a giant cocoon instead of the expected 4-meter big, as a body angel. So she turned to the servant, the goblin named Kale, and asked a few questions. Which came out as exactly as what her precious sister wrote to her. While she was questioning her, she on a whim wanted to read her mind or use a charm spell to double confirm it as an assurance. But stopped at the last second, because it would be demarital to the relationship of the factions. Though not much, but still a bit. For example, if another faction scans the minds of their subordinate without care, it would always worsen the relationship between them, no matter how good it was. Though most of the reason was that the angel that she came here for was off ultimate class, almost at the late stage of it from her estimation was nearby, and the fact that the angel did nothing that warranted such action. So she took the words of the goblin at face value and silently cast a decent frost spell on the angel as petty revenge for her sister instead of the whacking of the decade, since the angel looked like it might just die any second. But he wouldn't let him go scot-free. Instead of him paying her by getting whacked by her, she would make the heaven pay for scaring her sister and trespassing into a territory without any notice, especially since this territory houses sisters of Tumaos. Especially those who like their sisters very much. They wouldn't mind giving a nice dress or artifact that her sister liked, or a person or two who her sister wanted to add to her peerage, right? After that, she flew to where her sister was and spent a bit of time with her. Playing around with her and teaching her some magic. A thing that she hadn't done in recent times due to how busy she was. However, before she forgets, she should also contact heaven. Heaven, a place where millions upon millions of Catholicism who lives on earth thinks to be a place of eternal rest and joy. The place where one would never have to worry about anything or worry about mundane things such as food or clothes. A place that only one word could describe it: paradise. With endless white clouds that spanned as far as I can see and the angels of various tier flying in the sky, causing one to unconsciously to let go of all their worry and grievance as they enjoyed themselves. Though this was only the first layer of the 7 layers of system, but for the souls who live here, it didn't bother them. In fact, it only increased their faith and devotion with the fact that there are beings even more offspring are living in upper layers. Explanation of the layers of heaven. Second heaven, the cosmos layer. This layer contains the artificial sky of heaven and is a realm filled with countless stars and celestial bodies. It serves as a space where the angels can traverse and monitor the world. Third heaven, the Garden of Eden, a paradise-like realm filled with divine gardens, where Adam and Eve originally resided before the fall. It is said that this layer still holds the remnants of Eden and divine sanctuaries, though it is only a rumor. Fourth heaven, the realm of angels. This is where the majority of the angels reside, including regular angels and mid-level angels. It is also where the training grounds for new angels are located. Fifth heaven, the home of high-ranking angels, the domain of the cadres and powerful angels, including the archangels who govern the different aspects of heaven. This layer is more sacred and difficult to access than the previous ones. Sixth heaven, the throne of God and system control. This is the most important realm in heaven, as it houses God's system, also known as the sacred gear system. The throne of God is located here, where Michael now governs in God's place after his death. The system of heaven, a divine mechanism created by God, regulates sacred gears, blessings, and divine energy distribution. Seventh heaven, the Holy of Holies, the highest and most sacred layer of heaven, where God's essence once resided. It is considered a forbidden place that only the highest-ranking cadres and seraphs can enter. Even Michael rarely enters this layer, though for different reason. As it reminded him of the one. And in the 6th layer of heaven where sacred gear system was located, behind the massive desk sat a long blonde-haired and green-eyed man who looks quite feminine with his eyes dropping down and faint smile forever adorned on his face. Behind him 12 wings could be seen sprouting from his back. And the wings, each and every one of them was colored gold, symbolizing his position as the leader of the heaven with his creator gone and perished. He was going through a stack of documents just like his opposite, the leader of devils Zerst Lucifer did. Suddenly he looked up from his documents and materialized a magical circle, from which a familiar feminine voice sounds. "Greetings, Michael-san. I hope you are having a good day." Michael politely nodded, still with his soft smile that reminded one of one's mother or one's family. "Hello, Seraphal Leviathan. It has been a long time since we talked like this. Did you have something urgent to talk to?" The conversation started with greeting, after which it turned to the incident of an ultimate-class angel trespassing into Devil's territory, specifically the Sisters of Maus, and that it was seriously injured. A thing that stunned Michael to no end, as he was sure that not a single angel, especially the ones who are in ultimate class, had not left heaven in recent time. But as he continued listening, he realized that a new angel was born and that new angel was in ultimate class. Also, it was seriously injured and in Devil's territory. Through the fact that it was in human world relieved him quite a bit. If an angel is in underworld, they would have to be extremely careful and vigilant, as despite their relationship with devils, which was barely considered neutral relationship though almost falling into hostile, the devils wouldn't mind butchering any angel they come across. Finally the conversation ends as they reach an agreement of heaven sending out a bit of a resource to devils. Though she wanted extra little resources to be sent to Sunastiri and Ryaz Creamery, new generation of devils, in secret. In exchange they would forget about this incident and will deliver the angel to them, safe and sound. But Michael stopped them when they proposed it. As every ultimate class angel that was born is a boon to the heaven, he decided to send Gabriel to retrieve him. With the added fact of finally relieving Gabriel of her boredom. With a final farewell, Michael cuts off the connection and leans back. With a slightly softer expression on his face he stretched a bit. His body making some cracking sound that revealed how long he has been sitting and doing paperwork. He gazed up at the sky. A hopeful exhausted light flickering across his eyes. "Father, do you think heaven have a chance?" Chapter 30. Michael leaned against his chair with his eyes closed and took long, deep breaths for a minute. His chest rose and fell in a calming rhythm, almost hypnotic, the kind that could soothe even the most restless soul. His cherry-like red lips and soft expression took on the shape of a truly relaxed smile before returning to what it was. "Now, where was I?" he asked himself as he manifested a magical circle and called for Gabriel. He told her to come to him and that he had a mission he wanted her to do. Gabriel, from the other side of the circle, told him she would be here shortly, just after supervising the last cargo that was being delivered to heaven. While she was saying that, Michael could hear the faint bubbling in her polite words, conveying that she was quite excited. And he, on the other hand, returned to his work. After all, Work wouldn't just magically disappear, though he could make it disappear, but it wouldn't accomplish anything except waste paper. His hands reached out and grabbed a single paper from the stacks of paper, and his gaze glazed through its content in a matter of seconds. Request for reinforcements to recover lost Holy Maiden, Celestine Reinhardt, on the night of January 28, 2010, from one of the nurseries located in Italy, specifically the one on the edge of the city of. The case of Holy Maiden Celestine Reinhardt's disappearance happened. During the investigation of her disappearance, some exorcists found traces of demonic energy and sightings of devils in the nearby area. The investigator who was assigned to this task, Don Van Crane, reported to have seen a blonde-haired, red-eyed. Michael continued reading without his expression changing or his eyes flickering, from the smallest of dots, until the very last letter. An expression that in the ancient past he would never have imagined he would wear as he read one of "There's a loyal nun being kidnapped." After which, he wrote some simple instructions, such as to continue investigating, and if any more leads aren't found, leave it. A cruel yet cold decision, many would think, but it was the only way for Angels No. Heaven to continue to exist. During the Great War, thousands upon thousands, millions upon millions of beings had fallen. The faction that suffered the most damage was Heaven. At the very beginning of the war, the two factions, specifically the devils and fallen angels, mostly attacked Heaven due to the fact that Heaven was the strongest. If Michael were to be honest, they were probably the strongest in the world at that time. There were a few strong factions besides them, like Muslim, Norse, and Greek, especially Muslim. But they were still a head taller than all of them. The god at that time had just created the heavenly system, and with it, he started creating angels much more efficiently. Every day, several angels were born, and during that time, God even started creating sacred artifacts. Sacred artifacts, more commonly known as sacred gears, were created with parts of ancient monsters or fallen gods to display the miraculous powers they had once wielded, though that did piss off quite a few pantheons. But God did not care, so neither did he as his son. But then, the Great War started, with most of the firepower of the other two factions focused on Heaven. The devils and fallen had used despicable trick after trick, disgusting tactics that even the other supernatural factions frowned upon, such as planting explosives on one of their own or using soul manipulation to force other weak neutral forces to take part. As for fallen angels, while they used many disgusting tactics, the most notable would be male fallen angels mass breeding with other species to create an expandable force. A tactic that wouldn't have worked if not for Azazel's machine. A machine that massively increases the possibility of conceiving children by sacrificing the vitality of the mother and speeding up the growth of the baby to adulthood by also doing that, along with planting memories that make them loyal and experts in combat. However, the expert part might have been a joke due to the fact that they could never grow from the expert level, and they were much weaker than those who earned their strength through hard work or talent. But still, Azazel's trick seemed to have no end as he used equipment to supplement the lacking area. Halfway through the war, all the cultivated expandable forces started dying. At that time, Michael thought God had created something that would counter them, but instead, in reality, the lifespan of the new ones was so short that they were even inferior to humans, a race that was on the lower side of life expectancy. Heaven, on the other hand, mostly fought using only normal tactics and deception, as God refused to do an action that goes against his very teaching. The other factions that they had offended in the past didn't let this chance go by, as some aided the devils or fallen angels, and some even outright attacked them, the strongest faction in the world. The most notable who attacked them would be vampires, who just couldn't stop pestering them like a moth that saw the blazing sun for the first time. Whenever God turned his attention to them, they would disappear like shadows that saw light. Discarding everything they had built and hiding in a small private dimension that they had fortunately stumbled upon. However, after a few repeated attacks, their dimension, along with most of their first-generation Elden vampires, was killed and annihilated by God in a fit of annoyance. Despite all this, Heaven should have still emerged victorious regardless of what those filth had done, but Father God, one of the strongest, if not the strongest gods in the world, had sacrificed a significant portion of his strength to seal Thyxeria, the apocalypse feast, preventing it from causing any more destruction. And those filth, those who were left behind, did not appreciate his sacrifice. Instead, they only saw what a weakened God meant. Michael's fingers tightened around his fountain pen, cracked it, and almost pulverized it despite the magical enhancement that was placed on it. His thumb wrapped around the top part as it slowly divided into two. Creak with the cracking of the pen, Michael finally snapped out of his daze as his consciousness returned to the present. The present in which God had fallen. The present where they are regarded as a second-tier supernatural force that other pantheons like Greeks and Norse could defeat. A present in which they don't even have full control over their own church. Suddenly, a faint tapping of footsteps sounded from outside the room along with the swishing sound of wings as a being approached from beyond the door. Tap tap tap. When the owner of the footsteps got closer to the door, the footsteps disappeared in their place, and profound silence descended. Michael heard the slightest bit of wind that was seeping through the door and the quiet breathing of the person who stood outside. But it didn't continue long, as just a few seconds later, a knock was heard. "Toc, enter," Michael said without missing a beat, already knowing who was outside the door. With a click, the door opened, and the owner of the footsteps and the gushing wind came inside. And that person was Gabriel, one of the 4 great seraphs and sister of his brother. She said, her voice crisp and pleasant, akin to a piece of music to one's ears. And her appearance, much like her voice, was just as beautiful. With golden, silky hair that flowed down like a waterfall and mellow, golden yellow eyes that looked like they just melted, along with a body that not even a single devil could hope to have, for it was pure and untainted. Michael's soft smile widened further as he addressed her. "Gabriel, how are you? Did anything interesting happen recently?" Gabriel smiled in return and talked a bit about how she spent the day. How she spent the morning playing with the kids on the first heaven, and some information that she received from the spies on the human world that Michael currently wasn't aware of, also updating him on certain projects. They didn't talk long, as they both knew that Michael was busy and that they couldn't spend a day just talking about some meaningless things, so after about 15 or so minutes, they both tactfully stirred the conversation to important things. "Sister, I want you to go to Japan, Kuwa City, and retrieve a brother of ours. Possibly newborn, but in the ultimate class." Gabriel nodded with a serene smile on her face, a face that was akin to a loving mother with her wings flapping in joy, for another of their brethren would soon join them. However, there was a hint of steel in the depth of her eyes that told Michael that she understood the mission and would accomplish it without fail. "Although it might just be one of Leviathan's antics, she told me that brother of ours doesn't look like the rest of us." However, she didn't specify in which part. Michael continued. Gabriel in turn just giggled softly, with her eyebrow falling like a waterfall with a soft expression. "You foo-foo." Her voice echoing like the lapping of a small creek in a peaceful landscape. Peaceful and calming. Then she gently turned her head to Michael, her gaze locking onto him. "Brother, he is one of ours, it does not matter." Michael in turn just awkwardly smiled as he nodded back. "Yeah, you're right. He or she, what or it, does this not matter, for we are a family." Orb of light, low mid-class, the world around the orb of light was cold and distant, akin to an eternal winter or the deepest reaches of the sea. Yet his creator, the one who gave life to him, was warm and cozy. Warm to the point the orb of light just wanted to destroy everything other than it, so that only the warmth of his creator and he remained. Cozy enough that he just wanted to stick to his creator and eternally sleep beside him, not caring if the world itself burned to asunder. At least that was the thing the orb of light wanted, but it could not do to a certain green abomination who was trying to separate him from his creator. "You have already stuck to him for over an hour, don't you want to do something fun?" A disgusting nuisance who was named Katu uttered for the 4th time this hour, making him just want to burn this wench to the ground and be done with it. But he could not. As for some strange reason, his creator was keeping these beings as servants for unknown reasons. A reason that his little mind could not possibly fathom, but despite his meager wisdom, he had a faint guess. A guess that he, for some reason, was quite sure of. Which is that his mighty creator was keeping these disgusting things around himself for him, the first creation of his. To help him grow stronger and to familiarize himself with the world so that he would be of use to his creator as fast as possible, as currently the knowledge he possesses and the power that he has are pitiful to the point he might as well just not exist. Nevertheless, no matter how sure he was, unless he was absolutely certain or his creator specified, he would not kill them. So his thoughts returned to the present, which was that the repulsive green thing was trying to separate him. Silence. "You shall not sever the holy connection between me and my lord, the everlasting one. Go to your filthy hole, you rat." The young, crisp voice of the orb of light cursed as he pushed himself even deeper into his creator, almost like he was intending to become one with him. Meanwhile, Katu just looked on with a frown, the sides of her mouth tight. "I am not filth," she muttered as she sat. After a few minutes, she got up, grabbed a gauntlet weapon from one of her bodyguards, and took hold of the orb of light. The orb of light was at first confused, then angry, and then downright furious as he felt her hand and realized he was growing apart from his creator. You only to be silenced by the next few words Katu spoke. "Would Sir Moon have liked it if he knew that you were sticking to him instead of training or doing anything fruitful?" The orb of light stilled and stopped resisting as he let the filthy abomination carry him, his radiant form losing its fiery glare and becoming more tame as he grew more and more distant from his creator. The Occult Research Club, Ryaz, a young high-class devil, sat upon a luxurious chair with a deep frown upon her face as she talked with her parents, specifically her mother, through a magical version of a video call that used a simple magical artifact like an orb. "Mom, I am not going back. Raya said as she locked gazes with a well-endowed woman who looked to be in her mid-20s. The woman on the other side just sighed. I know that you don't want to, but I'm just worried. I have a bad feeling about that angel staying in your territory. Just come and stay in the mansion for a few days, Ryaz, please. Ryaz's sharp gaze, upon hearing her mother's reasoning and pleading tone, quavered and dulled slightly. I understand, Mom. It's just that I don't want to. Her head lowered, and her hand clenched into a fist. I have a feeling that if I were to step foot into the house, Father would force me to be wed the next day. Vanillana Greenery's eyes, much like her daughter's, dulled for a few seconds before lighting up again. But Ryaz, she tried to reassure her that she would make her husband stop forcing her to marry that waste of space. But she stopped in the next second as she realized she probably wouldn't be able to sway him this time. She had swayed and changed her husband's decisions many times throughout the centuries they were married. But through it all, the number of important decisions she truly changed was few and far between. And the decision of marrying Ryaz into the Phoenix family was a very important one that her husband would not give up on easily, especially considering how tight the friendship between him and Lord Phoenix was. So she did not insist further and sighed heavily. Okay. Be safe. Ryaz's head bolted upward, her eyes a bit shocked yet warm and soft as she smiled. Thank you. Vanillana Greenery just nodded back as she cut off the video call. La 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 la, a gentle hum, akin to the softest of waves, came out of Gabriel, seraph of heaven, as she flew out of the celestial realm. Her 12 white wings spread in full glory as she glided between the clouds and the sky. Her pearly white hands brushed the clouds as she scooped some up, something only possible thanks to her magic. Her pearl-like eyes briefly glazed over them before she let the cloud go. Beneath her, she saw some angels flying like her, though much lower and far slower. Good afternoon, Archangel Gabriel. A young angel greeted, eyes wide and confused as he looked up. He had probably only caught sight of her blurred figure by pure luck, looking in the right direction at just the right time. Almost all angels don't usually notice her at high speed, most can't even fathom the velocity she travels with. A greeting he gave, and a greeting she returned. Good afternoon, Cariel. She said, before vanishing from the young angel's view. After passing through several layers, she arrived at the second layer, second heaven, also known as the cosmos layer. This was where most angels traveled when heading to the human world. Just as she intended. She reached the central area of the realm, where the portal to Earth was located, and summoned a magical circle to teleport her to a sea area near Japan. The Japanese pantheon disliked unannounced teleportation, especially from powerful beings into their territory. Whoosh-whoosh, a sea of white adorned her vision for a moment before she appeared above the sea of vast expanse under a brewing storm, raging relentlessly. When the cold, unfeeling water splashed toward her, a faint yellow shield materialized, halting it midair. Gabriel's magic kept her pristine. Let's see. Where is Japan? She murmured as she spread her senses outward, detecting the direction. West. She said softly, and in a blur to lesser eyes, she shot across the sky, a trail of dim yellow light behind her. A few kilometers from Japan's coast, she flared her holy power and sent a message to the Japanese pantheon, explaining her reason for arrival. Only then did she proceed toward Kua City. After around 10 minutes and pausing twice to assess her surroundings, she finally reached Kua. A not-so-small city nestled in a relatively flat valley with rolling hills and distant mountains. And from the edge of her vision, she saw it, a rising sun signaling morning's arrival to the human world. Chapter 31. Gabriel quietly descends to the edge of the city while also pulsing her holy energy. Signaling to Seraphal Leviathan, who was currently in the city, that she had come and wanted to take one of her brothers to where he belonged. Why did she come here so fast? Seraphal whines on the inside as she turns to her sister to bid her farewell. Slowly her face scrunched as she walked to her sister. Her footsteps were slow and shaky as she took step after step. Each step was a deep reminder of how long she wouldn't see her sister and how much her sister would miss her while she was away for work. Finally, when she was about a meter away from her, her sister finally looked back at her with her eyebrow raised, and her eyebrow raised in a questioning gesture. The word she wished she would never have to say comes out of her mouth. So Tan, although I wanted to spend more time with you, I have work to do. Her eyes fall to the ground as she can't bear to look at how much her sister's heart will be broken by her cruel words. It would probably shatter her world into tens of pieces, no, hundreds of pieces, but she had to say it as leaving without telling would only give her false hope. But from the edge of her vision, she saw something that profoundly confused her. She saw her precious sister taking on a relieved pose with her back stretched and her hand on her glasses. The glasses that her precious sister wore reflected the light of the morning sun as the edge of her precious sister's mouth curved upwards into the shape of a subtle yet relieved smile. But she shook her head a second later, thinking that she was hallucinating due to how much reluctant she felt. After all, why would her sister be happy, no, relieved, when she left? I understand, after all, you are one of the mouse, and it should be expected for you to be busy. Though, sister, do you want a cup of tea before you leave? Sunesteri, her sister's voice, was the slightest bit more energetic, just a tiny bit different from just a few minutes ago, a slight difference that she noticed due to her monstrous senses. But Serafal denied it. No, her mind refused to believe anything that a logical part of her said. Thinking that her reluctance was on strike again. Although I want to, I can't. Someone is already waiting for me. Serafal said as she turned around and opened the window. Couldn't bear looking at the strong front her sister put up to calm her big sister's heart. When she opened the window, the fresh and slightly cold wind of the morning embraced her as it flooded the room with its wind. The wind wrapped her gently as if in an embrace, and the cool wind of the winter caressed her hair, soothing her aching heart. Serafal turned to her sister one last time before jumping out of the window, instantly disappearing from where she once stood. Sunesteri, who just saw her sister disappear instantly, seemed to weaken as she fell to the couch behind her. Her back was fully touching the back of the couch as she leaned back. Tsubaki, her queen, injects from beside her. Ms. Serafal is still as energetic as ever. Suna just nods with her eyes closed. Yes, more than usual, I might say. Serafal flew towards the angel's location while also pulsing her own demonic energy, signaling to Gabriel, one of the seraphs, to follow her. A thing that Seraph understood just a second after Serafal started pulsing her demonic energy. As she sensed it, she started following her. But not through the city, instead circling a bit around it. A gesture that Serafal understood. Gabriel was trying to keep her distance from the Kwa school to not give her a wrong idea. A polite and accommodating gesture, she might say. With a trail of 7 different colors, she closes in on where the angel is located. But midway through, just a kilometer or 2 away from the angel, she sensed another angel. An angel that was barely in the mid-tier but still a mid-tier angel. But Serafal didn't think much of it, just thinking that it was one of the scouts heaven sent before Gabriel came. After all, although negligible, there is a possibility that all this could be a trap. At least Serafal would think so, especially considering the not-so-great reputation the devils have. A thing that is becoming worse and worse due to the peerage system and how the young generation is abusing them like crazy. Heck, even the older generation wasn't much better. Fuyuya with a blowing of wind and a simple thud, she lands right beside the angel. Startling the creatures that were guarding the angel in the process. Which consists of 1 goblin and a few beastmen, though now that she thought about it, the young goblin is nowhere to be seen with only the older goblin remaining. But she didn't put much thought into it, after all, it was only a low-class goblin. Just a few seconds later, with a pure white trail, Archangel Gabriel follows right behind her. Serafal Leviathan, it's wonderful to see you again. A serene voice of the seraph follows soon after. With an exaggerated flourish, Serafal stuck her signature magical girl pose with her left leg raised high and her right hand in the shape of a V as it also covered her face. Good morning, Gabi-chan. I hope you're having a super-duper good day. Gabriel softly chuckles at her greeting with amusement evident in her eyes. Foo-fa-foo, yes, I am having a super day, thank you. After the initial greeting, Serafal decides to go into a bit more of a business mode, with her magical girl outfit temporarily disappearing, and in its place, formal attire takes place. Thinking that she should at least be a bit more professional. So here it is, the egg-kun, different from your average angel, huh? She said with a mischievous face adorned on her face. Hoping to get a reaction out of her, a thing that seemed to work, as the moment Gabriel turned to the angel, her eternally serene and soft expression hardened and turned forced, almost awkward she might add. Gabriel's face hardens and turns the slightest bit forced as she glances at the huge egg-like angel. Initially, upon seeing the big cocoon and the holy energy, she just thought that her brother created a defensive dome around himself to recover. But after spreading her senses a bit, she realized that her brother's shape was just like the dome. A giant, almost 4-meter diameter sphere. A truly towering sight it was. She mechanically walked towards the giant dome. Her movement was rigid and forced as she tried to hide her deep confusion and shock as she brushed her hand against the surface. Her hand met the warm and pleasant surface as her hand glazes through it. It was warm, not the slightest bit warmer or colder than it should be, it was a pleasant one akin to the warmth one had in one's bed during a winter night. The texture itself was akin to the softest of pillows, almost ethereal as her hand pushed against it. Yet it was also undeniably hard, revealing to her that it would not break easily. Through the touch, she double confirms that the being in front of her is an angel. Not some experimental being who somehow managed to wield holy power. Upon double confirming, her movements stiffened even more as she turned to Serafal, who had a gloating unjoyful expression on her face while also covering her mouth behind her hand. Puff puff, small bits of laughter leak out from it, while her face turns the slightest shade of red. Gabriel, on the other hand, just continued gawking at the egg-like dome, stunned, for a few seconds before finally snapping out of it. Well, he does indeed look unique. Gabriel said, her eyes darted toward the massive dome-like cover for just a millisecond. Very unique. Serafal just nods with a bit of a cracked, polite smile. Ahem, yes, but he is without a doubt an angel. Gabriel nods, after which she turns to the other creatures who are standing around him. And they are? Serafal just shrugs her shoulder. Well, they were accompanying the angel, so probably his servant or companion. Gabriel nods as she walks towards the goblin woman who is standing at the forefront. Hello, little friend, are you his companion? The goblin woman's eyes were glazed and unfocused and her body was stiff like a statue. It is 12, it is 12, it is 12. She repeated like a glitched machine that Gabriel heard off from one of his younger brothers. One that wouldn't work unless one reset or whacked the machine itself one good time, but of course since the creature in front of her is a living being, she obviously wouldn't whack it, but she probably need a simulation to snap out of it. Gabriel then in a slightly louder voice. Hello, little friend. The goblin woman flinched, and her distorted eyesight returned to normal. Yes, great Seraph-sama, we are his companions. Kale silently gazed towards her back, bending her leg to give a deep bow. With a thud, those behind her instantly bent their knees and took on a kneeling pose, while Kale, just a second after, also tried to kneel. Only to be stopped by Gabriel, one of the great seraphs. You don't have to do something like that. Stand up, do not kneel. Her voice was akin to smooth silk as she stopped them. Are all of you close to him? She asked again. Wanting to confirm it, just in case. Kale nodded. Yes, we spent quite a few months together. Gabriel just gently smiled and nodded in acknowledgement, and then she turned to the devil. Alright, Leviathan-san, it was nice meeting you. Serafal nods back as she also bids her farewell. Yes, it was, though I would have preferred if we could talk some more. Someday. Gabriel said, not answering yes or no, only leaving it to the future. After all, who would know what the future holds? She raised her hands and started manifesting a humongous magic circle, a circle that covered both her sleeping brother and his companion. The glow of the magic circle was of ethereal yellow, an elusive yet gentle one that would make one wonder. Wonder how such a beautiful color could exist. The symbols and circles that adorned her teleportation circle were full of her very own creation. Most of them were of her own creation, quite different from low-level teleportation circles that darted the human world, specifically the human mages, which were full of rigid, inefficient diagrams and symbols with no meaning other than some fancy and better-looking ones. Granted, her own magic circle was considerably harder and required more exquisite control, but its capability and how much less the circle consumed holy energy more than made up for it. Only for the goblin woman that stood beside her to stop her from teleporting them. Wait, great Seraph, my daughter isn't here yet. Her voice was frantic and rushed. Gabriel gently nodded at her and spread her senses. 100 meters, 200 meters, 400 meters. When she sensed about a kilometer away, she sensed it, a magical signature quite similar in nature to the goblin woman who stood beside her. Evident that they are related. Only for her to also sense another angle, a weak middle-class one. But still an angel. Leviathan, you did not say there was another. Serafal just took on a confused expression as she also spread her senses and sensed the new angel. Oh, that? She shrugged. Though it was one of your own. Gabriel materialized a magical circle below the goblin girl and the angel, instantly teleporting them to right beside them. Their reaction was one of confusion and wariness upon teleportation, but the daughter of the goblin woman calmed down upon seeing her mother and the calm reaction that her mother had. But the angel, on the other hand, was a whole other thing. Get away from him, all of you. The angel who, for some reason, looked like an orb of light yelled. But Gabriel didn't mind his appearance much, after all.